Awesome. I'm excited to be working with you guys today. This pre-auction profits is something we've been able to make really good money from, and I'm excited to share it with you today. You know, it's a great business to be in, the tax lien and deed business, and every time I find something that gives me a competitive advantage over other people, it's really exciting. Awesome. Well, it's 10:04, and if people are late to get on, that is what they are going to miss parts of this. For those of you that are on the line today, just because you're here on time, you're early, you're the first ones ever to get this information ever. I actually have some special bonuses just for you guys that you're going to get, and I'm excited because this is the pre-release of pre-auction profits. It is one of the most lucrative, most profitable ways, one of the fastest ways for you to be able to make money in real estate, to be able to make money in tax liens and tax deeds. So if you're as excited as I am to get this information and really to get ahead of the competition and other people are out there, give me one last sound check as we get started. Give me a yes in that question box so that I know each and every one of us are on the same page. Awesome. And then I'm just going to scroll through the first three slides and just make sure you are seeing the slides flip with me. So give me a yes for that as well. Say, I see the slides. I see the light, says Janice. That's pretty funny. You guys are seeing the slides flip back and forth, correct? Yes. Okay, good. I see the light, says Trevor too. Very good. So with this pre-release, what Dustin and I did is we really were diving into the tax deed and tax lien business. And Dustin Hahn and I, we've been in business since 2012, and we literally have meetings where we say, okay, we take time aside from the everyday hustle, the everyday bustle. A man who fails to plan is a man who fails to succeed. And so we take quality time every quarter to do planning, and then we do a multi-day planning during the annual meeting that we do with our what we call our significant stakeholders, which are our most important people that work for the company. Those of you that don't know, Dustin Hahn International, Dustin and I's companies, we have almost 40 people that work for us now, and it's an absolute incredible company, incredible business. We've been doing tax deeds, tax liens. We've been doing this education for a long time. And so when we have these planning meetings, we start to brainstorm. We start to come up with new ideas. We start to think of, what would be different than what else is taught out there? What would give us an advantage in business, in real estate? And when you put really smart people in the room and I can be a fly on the wall and I can listen to them, I start to see patterns that exist. And one of the things that I kept hearing from our team was, well, what if we could get deals done before the auction? What if we didn't have to go compete with everyone else at the auction? What if? And I said, well, it's not a what if, everybody. I said, I've done a few deals over the years before auctions. And I said, and if that's something, we think could give us a real competitive advantage over everyone else out there, then let's put more of a concentrated effort on it. Let's put some mailing campaigns together. Let's really dive deep into this. Let's get some deals. Let's get some case studies to show our students. Let's really get deep with this thing. And so that's when we started to come up with pre-auction profits. And so this is something that was literally in its infancy just last August, September, when we had our third quarter meetings of last year. And so I began working pre-auction deals as a part of our overall tax deed and tax lien auction process in September. And then it really came into force in October. And by November, we were having deals closing, and it's pretty incredible. So you're getting this stuff fresh. I mean, you're getting it very real time right now. And one of the things that always frustrated me about different real estate educators over the years is sometimes they're teaching what they did in 1990 or 2004, and that doesn't work today. I don't know how long my exact strategies for pre-auction profits are going to work, but I believe that right now, we have a couple year window where they're going to be real effective. Maybe they could work ever. Now, when you get the foundation of real estate down pat, then you can really do real estate forever. You're just going to shift with the times, shift with the economy, shift as things change, shift as your life changes, as you become a better investor and a better real estate person in your own backyard. I remember when I first started doing real estate, I had no clue what I was doing when I go all the way back to probably, I want to say 2005 was when I first started doing real estate. So we're getting real close to a decade now, or over a decade of doing this. And I remember I had no clue. I didn't know what hard money was. I didn't know what a tax lien. I didn't know what a tax deed was. I didn't know what wholesaling was. I didn't know what flipping was. I really had no clue. I'd made a little bit of money, so I went to some conferences. And so in the beginning, I really needed to partner with people who were more successful than I was, people that I could bring something to the table to really succeed with. And then there was a time in 2008 when I just got crushed. I just got hammered. And then I had to figure out how to do no money down deals, how to really do wholesale deals and how to flip properties in a whole different way. And so that changed the game for me. And I was doing short sales. And then coming out of 2010, I was really flipping apartments and I was flipping self-storage facilities. And then I got into 2012 and I met Dustin Hahn and I said, wow, I said, this is different. I said, this is a different niche. This is a different industry. And this is something I can apply to every type of real estate that I've been doing all of these years. So what you're going to get from me today, ladies and gentlemen, is a mixed bag of tricks. You're going to get everything I've learned about real estate over 10 years, but you're also going to get it very specifically focused to tax deeds, tax lien deals that happen before the auctions happen, because it's a fantastic way to make really, really good money. So I'm excited for you. We're going to talk about today, how to immediately profit from deals and transactions. What if you could take money home on the spot today in doing a deal? And that's something that very few people have ever been able to do in real estate. And it's a very rare thing. And I'm not saying every time you go out to do pre-auction deals, you're going to get money that you can put in your pocket today, right now to do. But I'll tell you what, if you go out and do pre-auction deals this month, I guarantee you can get a deal that can pay you this week, that can pay you this month, that can pay you for a very, very long time and can be really fantastic. And so what I like to talk about is both long-term game plans and short-term game plans. How do I make money right now? And how do I make money 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? Some of you are like, I don't have 5 more years to be doing this. And some of you are wanting to set yourselves up for a lifetime. So I think both strategies are very, very important as you're building your wealth, as you're building your real estate business, as you're succeeding in this thing. And so you want to keep both your short-term game and your long-term game in play at all times. So as we talk about pre-auction profits, we're going to talk about deals that are both short-term and long-term. What are we going to cover today? I think this is important for us to kind of get out of the way to make sure you understand that what we're going to go through. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through some case studies today because I think seeing actual real deals that we've done, that we've transacted is really fantastic. We're going to talk about why this business works, and we're going to put a little bit more of the philosophy, a little bit more of the backdrop behind it, because I think it's important to know more than just the mechanics of doing deals, because for a lot of people, the mechanics of real estate aren't as complicated as the people are in real estate. And so we're going to talk about why this business works, why pre-auction profits is something that's very successful, and why it can make a whole lot of money. We're going to talk about the magic of timing, because in pre-auction profits, you've got to get the timing right. If you don't get the timing right, you're going to end up spinning your wheels. You're going to end up wasting some time. And so we're going to talk about the power of timing and how it all comes together in this kind of magical moment. It's amazing that you have a good window to do deals of about 7 days before any auction. And a lot of people are like, well, can I go and negotiate a deal 3 months beforehand? Later, I'm going to get into why you always can go negotiate a real estate deal 3 months beforehand, and that's a normal real estate deal. It's no different than any other pre-foreclosure deal that is out there. Pre-auction profits is all about the magical timing of the 7-day window before an auction. It's because it's when the most money can be made. It's when the best deals can be done and you waste the least amount of time. Because if you could work diligently and you could get into this for 7 days out of the month, or 7 days once every 3 months, you're going to close deals and you're going to be able to get real estate transactions under your belt. We're going to go through the marketing. I'm going to show you the exact letters we use. I'm going to show you the flyers we use. I'm going to talk about the different types of bandit signs that we use. But I'm going to tell you how to get these people to call you. I'm going to tell you how to build a network and a community in your backyard and really get the relationships working for you in a positive way and really get the deal flow coming to you versus you chasing after deals. I think what happens to some investors is lots of times they're worried about the deal and they get stuck on the deal. And what happens at auctions when people get stuck on the deal is they overbid and they bid too much. Or what happens with pre-auction profits, if they get stuck on the deal, they end up very, very disappointed. In real estate, it's never about the deal. It's never about the one deal. It's never about the home run, the grand slam. It's never about the one deal one time. It's about the next deal. It's about the next deal because the next deal can always make you money. Most of the home runs, matter of fact, if I really think about it, every home run I've ever hit in this business was just the next deal. It wasn't the deal I thought that was going to be change me and my family's future forever. It wasn't the deal that I thought was magical. It was the next deal. It was part of doing a massive amount of work. It was a possible about being prepared, and it's not about being lucky. It's about doing as many deals as you can, letting go of the deals that aren't any good, and continuing to transact, not being greedy. And then what happens is then a home run just pops. Home runs happen in this business, and so you've got to play the game to be able to make the real big money. And at the same time, if you're willing to hit base hit after base hit and make 5,000, make 10,000, make $20,000, make $500 a month from deals and transactions, then somewhere along the lines, you'll get a deal like one of the properties that we invested in 3 months ago. It's 11427 Valerno Street in Houston, Texas, and it's a property that we're going to make $70,000 on and only put $28,000 into it. And so those are the kind of deals that happen because we're doing the base hits on a regular basis. And so we're going to talk about why marketing is so important, that instead of you chasing after the deals, because when you chase deals, they run from you. When you chase investors, they run from you. When you do proper marketing, when you set yourself up for success as an authority, as someone that can help people, that can make a difference with people, that can have an impact, then people begin calling you, and then the deal flow comes to you. Then you can pick and choose the right deals versus trying to force a square peg into a round hole and just do the deal that you kind of thinks maybe looks good and you really want to push it to be good because somewhere in your mind, somewhere in your philosophy, you really believe that it could be good. Deals are good based on the numbers, based on the facts, not based on what you think or based on what could happen. They're based on what is and what is reality. And so when you do a lot of marketing and you get deal flow coming in, then you can really be picky and choosy. And it's amazing if you just do it, the deals will come and the real estate will happen. We're going to go through the paperwork. I've got every single piece of paperwork that I've needed to do pre-auction deals. And then I even have one bonus tax deed and tax lien paperwork that I don't believe we've ever shared at Dustin Hahn International that I'm going to share with you guys today. And then I'm going to drop them out to those of you that are attending today. I'm going to drop them out to you in email. And so the cool part about this paperwork is I've been working with attorneys because we had paperwork we had drawn up. We had paperwork we've used for years and years. But you know what I wanted for those of you that are part of Pre-Auction Profits, I wanted you to have fresh, new, up-to-date paperwork drawn up by our attorneys, from the contracts to the warranty deeds to the authorization to release to the powers of attorney. So I got all new paperwork drawn up for you guys. Cost us about $3,000 to have all that paperwork redrawn with the newest, freshest stuff that's going on. But what I will do, a caveat, I will do our disclosure right now. Dustin Hahn International, Dutch Mendenhall, Dustin Hahn, we are not attorneys. We are not financial advisors. We are not real estate agents. We are not accountants. We cannot give you legal or financial advice. So anything that we share with you today is just a suggestion that you could potentially use as a template that then you could take to your attorneys in order to have them create a new up-to-date document. There, I got the legal stuff out of the way, everybody. We can move on. Now I'm going to get into negotiations. I'm probably going to spend more time in negotiations and talking about negotiations than any other subject today. And the reason I'm going to talk about negotiations more than any other subject today is because I believe negotiations is where the most amount of money is made in real estate. Your ability to negotiate, your ability to understand where deals are happening is absolutely important. And I think a big part of negotiations is to understanding what you can and can't do in real estate. what are different exit strategies, what are different entrance strategies, what are different ways to do deals. And the only way you can see that is by case studies. The only way you can see that is by going through it again and again and again and again and again. And that's why we do marketing, because you have more ways to explore deals than everyone else. On our auction trips, which is where we're out there looking at properties before the auction, everyone that's ever attended, and we actually have a few people who've been on auctions with me that are attending on today's webinar. Everyone who's ever attended knows there's a few facts. One of those facts is every single deal, I think of how could I do that deal. Whether I do that deal or not doesn't matter to me. I have no emotional attachment to any real estate deal whatsoever. But I always explore in my mind, and I start to run, I start to brainstorm, I start to creatively think, if I did this deal, what would I have to do to be able to make money from it? One, by always doing that, whenever you might do a bad transaction, it's good to have done that 1,000 times, because now your mind is working. Number two, the reason I always do that, because now I have more ways to negotiate. I have more leverage than anybody else when it comes to doing deals. And so negotiations is critically important. We're not only going to lay a foundation for influence in negotiations, but then we're going to talk about facts, hard rules. I'm going to give you guys a ton of step-by-step processes today, because or as Dustin would say, processes. I will maybe make fun of a few Canadians today. A few of the Canadians that are on the line today, just know that I do love Canadians. I just believe we should poke jest at them for every once in a while, just because it's a good-hearted nature between Dustin Hahn and I. So those of you that are on the line today, I want you to understand, as we're doing negotiations, we're going to go through step-by-step processes. As we go through marketing, as we go through the paperwork, we're going to go through the lists and the checklists that we use when we're doing deals. And so make sure you're, as one of the ground rules today, that you have a pen and paper, that you're ready to take notes, that you're very plugged in. Make sure that your speakers are turned up. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes before the hour, at 11 Pacific, 10 minutes before the next hour. We'll take a 1 hour lunch, and then every 15 minutes we'll be taking a 10-minute break. I figure, this isn't a seminar. I figure you're at home, or you're at an office, probably at home, listening to this, watching this. And so if you can't use the restroom in 10 minutes, I apologize, but I want to move effectively, efficiently through the day. We still have people that are jumping on right now, but we're just going to keep right on moving. We're going to keep right on grooving. So let's get nitty gritty. If you're ready to get nitty gritty, if you're ready for me to be real versus sugarcoat and stuff and tell you guys how this business really works, give me one big loud yes in the question box. I'm just going to do audio checks from time to time to make sure I don't talk for 35 minutes and nobody can hear me. Very good. Thanks, Harvey. Thanks, James. Let's go ahead and move on. James, you're not related to the famous UFC light heavyweight champion Cormier, are you? All right, I paused. We're going to wait for, he said no. Well, you could have got me tickets, and then I'd really give you insight into real estate, even at a deeper level. I'm just kidding. All right, let's get into this, everybody. Let's talk about deals. Let's talk about transactions. One or two people said they see the navigation bar on the left-hand side of my screen. That's okay. I don't mind seeing the navigation bar, everybody. It just helps me keep us running at a really good pace. I'm going to go ahead and take our view up to full screen. There we go. All right, so this property is 7103 Venus, Houston, Texas, 77088. We ended up doing a $9,000 hard money loan on it at 20%. The property was worth $100K. One of our students partnered into this deal with us for $4,500. And what the philosophy on this property is, as we take a look at it as a case study, and we'll get deeper and deeper into this deal, but what the philosophy on this property is that we're going to give this gentleman a hard money loan. His taxes are going to get paid off. And then once his taxes are paid off, he's going to make monthly payments to us. Well, not he is. He is actually making monthly payments to us. So we received our first monthly payment from him on January the 2nd. And so he's paying us that great interest. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just note that alone, without having to go to the auction and buy properties, without having to go to the auction and do deals, that alone, if I can get 20% return on my money, it doesn't take very much money that in a few years you will be very, very wealthy. So I want you to understand something, and I want you to know that for sure that that is a good deal, even if we don't go ahead and activate on the back end of this deal. And what I mean by activate is if this gentleman who couldn't pay his $5,000 in taxes, right, cannot pay us our $9,000 hard money loan in 1 year because we gave him a 1 year balloon. Now, sometimes I give people 90-day balloons. Sometimes I give people 6-month balloons. What a balloon is, or we call it a bullet in real estate, is that they have to pay us the full $9,000. And so what we're talking about here is a deal that if at the end of the year he can't pay us that $9,000, we're going to foreclose on the property. Now, if I'm doing this deal properly, I built a pretty good relationship with both Don and Ed. Don is the son who lives in the house. Ed is the owner who does not live in the house. I built a pretty good relationship with them. And at the end of a year, if they can't pay the $9,000 or won't pay the $9,000, I imagine I'm going to be able to cut them a $5,000 check, and they'll cash for keys. They'll walk out of the property, and I'll have a $100,000 property for 14 grand. And so this is a really good situation, a really good deal for us to be able to have success. When we first drove up to this property, it was really interesting because, this is a tax sale, tax deed property in Texas. And when you look at a deal like this, you're kind of like, this guy can't afford to pay his taxes, but he's got the Dodge Ram pickup truck in the driveway. He's got a Mercedes in the driveway, and he actually had a decent little other car. I can't remember what kind it was there on the right. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, he could just sell one of those cars and probably pay his taxes. He didn't have a huge tax bill. I think it was 56. It was between $5,000 and $6,000. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this guy's a little bit crazy. Well, there's only three reasons that I've come to find that people lose their property at tax sales. And obviously it's the 95% rule. There may be 5% of the time it's different than this, but I've only found three reasons. The very first reason is the kind of the situation we're in here is that somebody is mentally ill. They have lost their sense of reality for some reason. They do not have a firm grasp or firm control over what's going on, and so they've lost their grasp on reality. Number two, the second reason that people lose their property to tax sale, tax deeds, tax liens is because they're dead. People die. It's a very, very common thing. We've picked up properties where somebody died and they have no relationship with any family whatsoever. We've picked up properties where somebody died and the families are fighting for different reasons and they're not paying the taxes. We've picked up, different, all kinds of different reasons when people have died. And the next reason that people pick up don't have properties is because they have addictions. So they either have an alcohol addiction, a drug addiction, a gambling addiction. They have some kind of addiction that has really misshapen their sense of reality. And that's what we find more often than not, that people have lost their sense of reality. So the gentleman that went up to this door was one of our students first. He knocked on the door, or I think it was actually one of our female students, Carol, and she knocked on the door, and she got a chance to just kind of talk to Don briefly, and she came back to the car, and she's like, Don really wants to talk to us about what we can do for him right now. And of course, that's, what we pre-program, what we pre-talk to, how we preset the conversations. And when I get into negotiations and I get into scripts a little bit more later, we're going to talk about that. So when you go up to the door, the first thing you do is you introduce yourself with your name. You reach out your hand, because when you reach out your hand, people shake your hand, and you always look somebody in the eye and you smile. And I don't know if this is the only way to do it, but it's the way that's worked the best for us. And so what we say to that person that's at the house is we say, I'm not sure if you're aware of what's going on, but we happen to know that this property is going to sale on Tuesday at the auction. I believe this was on a Saturday, Tuesday on the auction. And I was wondering if you had a solution or if you'd figured out what you're going to do about it. Now, most of the time, 80% to 90% of the time, they're going to tell us yes. And so when they tell us yes, then you're going to say, okay, congratulations. I'm so glad you were able to take care of that. And I really hope that that the city doesn't give you a hard time anymore. Then you just pause, then you go silent, and you really just continue to go silent until they say something. Because what happens is once they've told their lie, most people, because they have a conscience, they can't wait to tell you the truth. So if you just shut up and listen, and I've been saying this to people forever when I talk about how to communicate, how to get people sales, communication, relationship, the number one rule is just shut up long enough and people will tell you everything you need to know. And and uh and it's crazy how then people start to tell you, well, well, my sister was going to pay it, but she hasn't gone down there yet, and she was supposed to pay it, or my aunt, or I was going to sell that Mercedes, which is what the guy in this house said, which is funny because he said, I was going to sell the Mercedes to keep the house, but I tell you, I'm really more. These were the exact words out of his house. I really, more interested in keeping my Mercedes than keeping this house. And he was the son of the owner, and that just struck to me right there. Is this guy has a really false sense of reality, false sense perception of what's going on. And so I told Don, because I went back up to the house with Carol after this, and I told Don, I said, Don, I really am interested in you keeping the house. I'm interested in you keeping your Mercedes. And what if I could put a little cash in your pocket right now? Is that something that would be pretty exciting to you? And what do you guys all think that Don said? Of course, he said yes. He said that's interesting. Nobody's ever approached that like that with me. And so it's always be in agreement, say yes to people, and give them a mind-blowing offer that they can't refuse to. Now, did I talk about how much money? Did I talk about numbers? Did I get myself into a negative negotiating position later because I threw stuff out? No. But I said to Don, if you could keep your Mercedes, if you could keep the house, and you could put some cash in your pocket, would you be interested in working out a deal? He said yes. And so now I'm in the door. Now I have one foot through the door. And so then I say to Don, and this is one of my favorite questions when doing these kind of deals. I said to him, I said, Don, so tell me what's going on. Then your job is to go ahead and shut up all over again. And because what I've come to realize is obviously silence is golden. So then what Don did is he brought me into the house and he began to talk to me about what was going on. And he showed me how the living room, and this is actually a really big house. I don't know if you can fully see it here, but it's a really big house. And showed me the living room where the foot, the ceiling had collapsed. They had since had the roof completely repaired. So it has a new roof on the house, or fairly new roof on the house. And he had never cleaned up the living room, so it was still there's some mold in the living room. It was fairly dirty, what I came to realize, this guy wasn't even a hoarder. He just wasn't a person who believed in cleanliness. He didn't have that gene. He was born without that part to be clean, to keep his area clean, to have his house clean. And so what I came to realize is that there was some mental stuff going on with him where his perception of reality was off. And so then I asked him, I said, Don, so are you the actual owner of the property? And he said, well, my father is. And so what I realized in this situation is that Don is just a conduit to the actual owner. And we find this a lot with renters. We find this a lot with owners. Of family members or children, that they're not the actual owners in the house, right? And so this is a situation where, and we see this a lot, where the children or the relative or the friend is in the house. They're supposed to have taken care of the taxes, and the actual owner of the house just doesn't want to deal with it. This guy, the guy who owned it, didn't want to deal with his son's dysfunctional way of living. You could tell that later on when I got to know Ed, he has some kind of guilt somewhere about how his son was raised or who his son was. Who knows? But you start to see these things. And so as we continued to talk to Don and he showed me through the rest of the house, just so fascinating. I mean, as we first saw the living room, and then we go back around to the left side of the house and I see the first bedroom. And literally, this gentleman, Don, was sleeping on a bunch of foam with a tiny little TV. Couldn't have been more than the size of my computer screen, probably 12 inches, old, not even a flat screen, old TV. And, you could tell he spent a lot of time in there. Then what's fascinating is he takes us down the hallway to the right a little bit, and he shows us the first bathroom, which is completely remodeled, completely fixed, completely done up, in a pretty nice way. Obviously, Don's bedroom was pretty disgusting. The bathroom was really, really nice. Then Don takes me down to the hallway and shows me his son's bedroom, which is in really pretty nice repair. It's got a decent bed in it. It's a decent bedroom. We're still gonna have to rip the carpet out, paint it, and those kind of things. But it's in pretty good shape. Then he takes me down the hallway to the right, and I see the next bathroom, which is literally just like a closet with no door on it whatsoever, and just a toilet, and it's just strange. It's just strange. And you walk through that bathroom, back into the hall, down to the left, and then he takes me to what I would assume would be the master bedroom, where he said his niece was staying in there. And it's got this small little four steps up to this big master tub that's in there. That's almost not quite a hot tub, but a big master tub. And the back bedroom's really nice, and that room's been all remodeled and repaired. And so it's like the greatest crazy yin and yang concept I've ever seen in my life. And so I said to Don, if I were to ask you to walk away from this property, and this is one of the scripts, you guys should be writing this down. I said, if I were to ask you to walk away from this property, what would it take? And he said, well, I'm not really sure. I said, well, Don, if I had cash, literally, I went to the bank and I brought you back cash here to your house. I opened up a briefcase and I got those $100 bills out and I gave you cash. What's the least amount of money that you would be willing to take in order for you to be able to go ahead and leave the property, and get yourself into a better, newer situation? Understand how I did that. I said least amount of money, which was very quick, in order for you to be able to leave the property, move on into a better place in your life. Because you're going to lose this property on Tuesday no matter what. Am I right? And he's like, yes. Okay. And so, Don had quoted me $30,000. And, and, and at that point I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that kind of deal. This house seems like it needs a lot of work. I haven't even had it inspected. I haven't even gone through it. All we did was a quick looky-loo. His house needs a ton of work. I don't know if I could do $30,000. It's probably way more than I'd be willing to invest. But maybe I could do 25. Maybe I could do 20. I really don't know. But I definitely would be willing to pay you cash in order for you to move out and be able to get the property. What's most important to you? Is it cash right now? Is it some time to stay in the property? Is it having a new place to move into? What's most important to you right now? Now, this is a very good question, because those are typically the normal three options that people have when they're doing deals. They want to get into a new place, they want to stay, or they're just greed centric and they think money is the root of all their problems, and so they want money. They want money right now. And so what he said is he really wanted to stay. So when they say they want to stay, typically this is where I'm thinking hard money, even though I'm not telling him that. I said, well, we might be able to do the 25 to $30,000, depending on that there's no major structural problems, and but you're gonna have to get your dad here, because I can't do this deal without him, because you don't have the authority, with the property and stuff, and I know it's your house, but he's the one on title, so you're gonna have to get your dad here. Now, this is where one of my students kind of started to freak out a little bit, because this deal at 30,000, it may need 25,000 in rehab, 55,000 with all other miscellaneous stuff. Maybe I'm in for 65. 165,000, $100,000 deal, still a pretty good deal, but it's not a great deal. It's not a phenomenal deal. It's not an incredible deal. And what my student didn't understand at that time is he didn't understand that the number one rule is get the meeting. Get the father to the property, get the owner to the property, get them on the phone so you can begin negotiating. Remember, this is a Saturday. Our auction is on Tuesday. We have less than 3 days to get this deal, to get this transaction done. So now I got the father to the property. We came back and met the father the next day. And so now I got the father to the property, and I asked him, what does he really want out of this thing? He said, well, I'd be all right with keeping the house. I'd like to keep my son in a place. If I could get some money now, I'd be pretty happy. And I said to him, I said, well, if I'd go down and loan you the money, and if I went down and paid the taxes right now, is that something you'd want? And he's like, I sure would. And I said, if I could give you a few grand, um, you know, for 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 the hassle and headache, as a part of that loan, is that something you'd want? It's always interesting. I think when people are in financial dire straits and they can't pay their taxes, they always have other bills. They have other challenges. Um, and for me, 5,000 I didn't think was enough, and so I went ahead and gave him a $9,000 hard money loan. And so I was able to get him to agree to the $9,000. And so now this can start to turn into a really, really phenomenal deal for me in the future. So now I'm in a really good situation. I have a $9,000 hard money loan. I got him to agree to it. So now your next step is once the father agrees to the hard money loan, do you guys see how the $25,000, $30,000 purchase price, $40,000, none of that ever came up? It was really directly addressing their needs, directly addressing they want. So the first thing that I do is I go down to the county and I pay the taxes myself. And so this is important for you to know. Before I went and paid the taxes myself, I also had the title pulled on the property to make sure he is the only owner of the property so that he can sign a hard money loan on the property. I make sure that he is that there's not other liens and other things going on in the property. So then when I go and record, I go down to the county and I record my hard money loan against the property that I'm in first lien position on the property. So now I'm in every single way in this property. I'm in a winning situation. And so here's the bottom line. And I think here's the thing that sometimes people forget. We did something really great here for Ed and Don. We did something really great for ourselves. And on top of all that, now we've set ourselves up for a big win later on should we need it. I don't know in all my years of real estate if anything can get better than this kind of deal. A deal where we make money right now, a deal where we have a chance for a big win later, and we did something good. Because the fact of the matter is Don needs help, and we're giving him some time to be able to get help, giving him some time to be able to get his property maybe in better working condition, better dire straight. Because I tell you, if he can do, and he's the one that did the bathroom, he's the one that did his son's room, he's the one that did his niece's room back there. So if he could do that with the rest of the house, now we have a hard money loan on a property that's in better condition than what it is today. He's only maybe going to make the property better. If he makes it worse, it's no skin off of our back. At the end of the year, somebody who's dysfunctional in financing today is going to be dysfunctional in financing 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, unless something changes in their life. But at least we're giving them a chance. At least we're giving them hope. And the owner, Ed, is also in a better situation because he's got some money in his pocket that he can have now. If he doesn't pay off the $9,000 hard money loan, he's made cash in his pocket, and he's rid himself of the headache of a property that he doesn't want to have anything to deal with. So this is a fantastic case study. This is a really great deal. I just want to check in with everybody and see. A couple people said they can't see my screen. You guys should be able to see my screen. Are you guys able to see the picture of the property? Yes, you can. Okay, good. Okay, good. A couple people said they can. They couldn't see it. So I was talking about this property and the Mercedes and the Dodge Ram, and some of you couldn't see it. So that sucks. But now you can see it. So that's a good thing. Awesome, awesome. What I want to do is just give you guys a quick minute or two to ask any specific questions about this particular deal before I begin to move on to the next to the next section. Somebody said it disappeared when I went to full screen. What I'll do is I just won't go to full screen the rest of the day. Then we'll just use this slide deck, which is great. Good questions. Take it in. We're going to give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If I see a question pop in there, we'll get going. So this is what we hear about sometimes in real estate. We hear the philosophy, the success curve, one deal, one time, can change everything forever. I think one deal, one time, getting your first deal done can change everything for you. I think it can really dramatically change your success curve. But I don't think financially one deal, one time, if you're trying to hit that kind of home run, I think you're going to miss. And so this is, just a little bit of our philosophy is play the numbers game. And so as we talk about this pre-auction profits today, we're going to talk about you've got to play the numbers game. You got to go out and you got to see 50 properties. You got to do marketing that gets people calling you. You got to do more than just a little in order to be successful. What we're talking about in today's economy is we're talking about some interesting things going on. We're talking about a world that is very much up and down. Some people believe it's a good economy. Some people believe it's a bad economy. We're talking about a divide between the rich and the poor that is growing greater than it's ever been before. Some of the cities that I do real estate in, you have your mansions and you have your upper middle class and you have your beautiful neighborhoods. But then some of the areas we go into in those very same cities are literally third world countries. I see a city like Los Angeles where anybody can make $100,000 a year, and and then I go down and I see the greatest tent city of homeless people I've ever seen in my life. And so where we're at with today's economy is the wealthier have understood these philosophies that we're talking about today. The wealthy understand how to make their money work for them, and it's literally becoming generational in some parts of the country in order for you to have a home, in order for you to have wealth, because you can't make enough money in one lifetime to be extraordinarily wealthy if you just have a job. If you only have a job. As an entrepreneur, you can build something really incredible. I think we're going to maybe have some craziness come up with these new elections. And so what I'm talking about in today's economy is it's just a great time to do real estate because the market's appreciating right now. It might spring back. It might not, at some point in time where we take another hit, but it's going to keep appreciating. And if you're working in cities that are less than your major coastal cities, then they're never going to take the hit. And we have just a strong economy. And it's crazy because we have some underlying things that are going on right now that a lot of people aren't aware of. 3D printing is going to bring back manufacturing to the United States in a way we never knew was possible. It's going to stop the export of China in a way that most people never realized. The oil that we have in our country right now is going to get people more expendable capital, more expendable money than they've had in quite some time. Now, for me, a dollar less in gas doesn't make a difference. But for a normal person, saving a dollar on gas when they're driving 40 miles a day, 50 miles a day, makes a massive difference and gives more expendable income. When people have more expendable income, most Americans, most people, they spend it. And so what happens, that keeps a driving force behind the economy. And so it's just really a fantastic time to be in real estate, to be in business, to be doing these things. When this business gets tough, when real estate gets a little bit more difficult to do, is when things are stagnant. Give me a blown up bad economy and I can make a lot of money. Give me a good economy and I can make money. Give me an economy that goes up and down, I can make economy. When I have a dead, stagnant economy that's just kind of sitting flat time, it's the most challenging time to do real estate. And so you're just in a really great place right now to do these deals. One of the things I find, one of the missing pieces in this game is with pre-auction profits is the ability to do deals, ability to do real estate in your own backyard. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter who you are, right? You can get to these deals. You can get to these owners of these properties before the auctions ever happen. Doesn't matter if you're in Los Angeles and there's only 2 auctions a year, or if you're in Texas where there's an auction every single month, or if you're in Florida where there's auctions every month, or if you're in Arizona where the tax auctions are only once a year, as you're in a situation, and you can apply a lot of these same concepts to the foreclosure auction, but I just don't think you can get deals done the same way as quickly as you can by simply going down and paying the taxes for a property in order to make it right. And it's too much of a headache even if you buy a property and then it sells at foreclosure in order to be able to come back full force through everything. It can be a really, really big headache. And so I think this is one of the key components is because I do believe that if you can find a good team and you can find a good infrastructure, you can do real estate anywhere in America, period. But at the same time, I believe that if you can do real estate in your own backyard, it levels up your experience, it levels up your ability, and it makes life a little bit easier than being on a plane constantly. Now, I'm the one saying this. I live in California. I have offices in Vancouver, Florida, and California, and my biggest real estate production right now going on is in Houston, Texas. So I do travel quite a bit. That is part of the game for me. Um, as we continue to go through this, let's just kind of start to talk about how to beat out the big investors. So what happens down at auctions is they really, really cycle. Big investors will intentionally push small investors out of auctions. Even at small sales, big investors will push small investors out of sales. I have one precinct that I'm working in, one county I'm working in, where I've literally pushed everybody who doesn't understand, one, how to do the type of deals I'm doing. Number two, isn't willing to spend as much money as I am. I literally kept bidding properties up. It cost me a good chunk of money, but I kept bidding properties up so that they would stop coming to the auctions. So they would kind of give up hope. And I know that that's not the nicest thing in the world, but I'll tell you, it's either they buy a property at auction or I buy a property at auction. And what I found is once I could kind of take a little bit more control over an auction, then the amount of money I save, deal in, deal out, is absolutely fantastic, absolutely tremendous. And so I've literally saved $500,000 by spending an extra $100,000 by pushing investors out in one of the precincts I bid in, going back to September. And so that's what happens to the small guy sometimes when it comes to auctions. Not always, but what can happen to him. And so how I think you can beat out the big guy as a normal investor at auctions is you do these kind of deals. You're getting yourself out to these kind of transactions, these kind of deals really, really quickly. And it's about perseverance. It's about timing, and it's about the magic of all of it. And so, when you're doing these kind of things, it really makes a big difference. So obviously step number one, and I'm going to go through some things that to some of you may seem rudimentary, but I'm also going to go through some things that some of you are going, okay, I didn't know that. So the very first thing is you got to get the list. It's one of those things that if you get the list, as soon as you can get the list, you can start doing your research, you can start doing your due diligence, you can start pulling up pictures, you can start creating your plan. And so once I get the list, then what I do is I get my list put into this mapping software, and the mapping software that we use, and this wasn't something I thought of putting into the PowerPoint, so you might want to write this down. It's called Route for Me. It's the number four. It's ROUTE four, and then me.com. Because what we're going to do is we're going to drive every property that we have the time or the ability to drive that is on the list. Now, when you get the list, you may want to take some time to try and narrow it down. But what I've kind of come to find is that most investors do kind of this silly thing where they try to take the lowest tax amount, because we know that's going to be the starting bid, with the highest value on property. Well, I think then you're choosing the most competitive properties possible. And so you kind of want to be careful about that. And the other thing is those properties are the most likely to be redeemed before auction, because those people are in a better situation. Now, if you have an abundance of time and you can see and go to every single property, then obviously you go to those too. So what I like to do is kind of look at take properties that are in maybe what I would call my mid-range to lower mid-range of price. So I don't want to go with the bottom dollar properties, the house that's only worth 15 grand, or the house that's only worth 10 grand. In that market, you might want to be focused on properties from 50 to 100 grand, where the higher end, nicer neighborhoods, upper middle class neighborhoods are going for 200 to 250. And so what I like to do is I like to go anywhere from 10 down to 30% below kind of what the mid market in a market is, and those are the properties I kind of start to focus my time and attention on first before I go out to everything, because I find that I'm able to get more of these types of deals done in that lower mid market than I am in the high end, or even in the guttural low end. Because what I find in the low end, one is you always need a partner in those neighborhoods because they can be more dangerous. But number two is those people that are in that kind of situation can't even get their act together enough to just sign some paperwork. And so it's one of those situations where I just find that there's more headaches. But I've found great deals and great transactions in that area. I mean, I have a $17,000 house that we're selling for $36,000 right now. I mean, those are fantastic numbers. I mean, it's a fantastic deal. So when you think about it, it's all about getting the list. It's about getting your route planned for you. One thing about planning your route. So when you use a route planner, what happens is it tends to kind of weave you on your way out of a city, and then it has a tendency to weave your way back into a city. And so that's not the most time conscious way of doing route planning I've found when it comes to doing real estate and deals. What you want to do is you want to literally do circles. And you want to start from a center point of a city and then start to do circles with your route going further and further out of a city, and I find that to be the most effective way. And then once you're out to the outskirts of the city, you just make one line drive back to wherever you need to go. I've just found that the most effective, most time proper way of driving properties and seeing properties. And it literally, the way I just said it, can save you hours. Now, if you're going multiple days, and so let's say you're going to go one day north, one day east, one day west, one day south, then what I would do is just weave your way all the way to the outskirts of the city and then make one long drive back. Literally have found that method of versus just trusting the route planner can save you hours and hours of time. And so it's just a very important quick tip with going and driving properties. The next step makes perfect sense to everybody, but make contact with the owners or the renters, or you even should put on here as a caveat too, or the neighbors. Make contact with somebody. Try and get a phone number to somebody. It's so critically important for you to make contact. A lot of people, don't want to do door knocking, don't want to do that kind of thing. And granted, marketing can work and bring you deals, but I find there's nothing more effective than going door knocking the week before an auction, and literally going up to doors and just asking people how they're doing, going up to doors using the scripts I gave you guys earlier for doing this is absolutely incredible. And so I go and I talk to the owners, the renters of the property. If it's a renter, one of the questions I always ask them: do you want to stay in the property if it when it goes to sale on Tuesday? Now I know part of this is just auction training, but I always tell every single renter, and this is just establishing a position of authority, but it's also them wanting, right, to do business with you and want a transaction to you. I say, so if the property goes to auction on Tuesday, I'll be the one buying it, and I'll be here on Wednesday to collect rent. I'll be the one buying it. I'll be here on Wednesday to collect rent. So you want to stay in the property? And they're like, yes, I want to stay in the property. I say, okay. And if I could, do you want to buy the property? Would you like to live in this house? Would you like to own this house if I could arrange that for you? And they might say something, well, I make good money, but I just don't have the credit to be able to do it. I said, well, what if your credit wasn't an issue, and what if you didn't have an issue with getting finances? Would you want to buy the property? And they say yes. Now I'm in a pretty good situation with them, because I'm in a situation, one, where I have leverage with the renter because I can sell them a house, which they previously didn't think was possible, right? And I say to them lots of times, I say, and the crazy part is, if I sold the property to you, your monthly payment might be less than what you're paying right now. How cool would that be? And they're like, oh, that would be awesome. And so the magic part of this is just getting them on your side. You want to get these renters on your side so then they can get you to the owners. And I say, okay, well, what I really need is I need the phone number to the owner, because I need to be able to talk to him, because I may be able to work something out before the auction, so it doesn't even have to go to auction, because I'd hate for you to have the sheriff come here, make you move your things out, evict you, all of those kind of things when you haven't even done anything wrong yourself. And these are the conversations we have with renters. Now with neighbors, we have completely different kinds of conversations. With neighbors, we want to find out everything that we can find out about the property, and try and get the contact to the owners. What they know. Did the person die? And just because one neighbor tells you something doesn't mean it's true. Just because the renter tells you something doesn't mean it's true. Just because the owner tells you something doesn't mean it's true. In this game, in the tax deed and tax lien game, you just have to assume that everybody is lying until you find out the truth. And it might not even be that they're intentionally lying. It's the story they heard or the story they knew from somebody else. So I just don't believe anybody until I've heard the story multiple times from multiple different people. They might tell me the owner of the property died. They might tell me his kids own the property. So at least I know what I'm dealing with, because if I know what I'm dealing with, now I can go do what's called a skip trace. I can go do a people find and maybe find the relatives or find the spouse, or I can find someone else who has the ability to do something with this property and this transaction. And so I'm trying to make contact with everybody while I'm on site. Now I'm going to get more into the marketing and tell you what else I do when I'm on site in a little bit, but I promised you guys a break on the hour every hour. So it's 11 o'clock. We're going to get restarted, rebooted at 11:10 Pacific. So we're going to just take a quick 20 to 30 minute, 10-minute break. Forgive me, everybody, 10-minute break. And during that break, if anybody wants to put any questions into the question box, I'll either answer them right when I get here, and um, I'm going to answer these questions right when we come back from the break in 10 minutes. Holly, that's a great, great question, and I'll address that directly when I come back here. That's a really good question. Holly, matter of fact, I wouldn't miss that question when you guys come back here in 10 minutes. So be on time, and I will see you guys in just 10 minutes. All right, everybody, I'm just going to do a quick check that everybody's back and the sound is working and we are ready to go, that you are seeing step 2, make contact with the owners or renters of the properties. Give me a quick yes in the question box. Go ahead and do that quickly. Yes, good, Harvey. And how do you guys like my music selection for the day? Do I need to pick up the energy of it? Are we okay with my music selection? Is it, or do we have any haters on here with the music selection for the day? Just kidding. I really don't care what your guys' opinion of my music selection is. All I care is that you learn real estate. So Holly had a great question. It says, the auction website always warns people, don't disturb the occupants. It is illegal. Does this matter? What do you think of this warning? Well, I'll start it with the caveat as I'm not an attorney and I cannot give you legal advice. And I would never advise you to break the law. And so there may be different laws in different counties and different states across the country. So that's what I call the protect my own butt clause. And at the same time, I've been knocking on doors for 10 years, and I've never had a challenge or an issue once in my entire history of knocking on doors. Matter of fact, in actual houses where I went up and knocked on the door, I've never even had a scary or really bad situation with a bad occupant or bad owner. I think one time I was in front of a house taking pictures, and I had somebody come out and kind of start yelling at me. I think um, uh, one time I had somebody who was a little angry that I was knocking on the door, but I'm talking thousands and thousands of properties, so less than 1% of 1% that I ever even where somebody was unhappy that I was knocking on their door. So it's just one of those situations. It is what it is. And so you go and you talk to people. You go in there with the right attitude, the right intention of offering help, and I'll have some other things for protecting your butt a little bit later on in the webinar. And so that's a really good question, Holly. I do want you guys to ask questions today. I don't know if I'm leading you down a path or I'm telling you, things that are really making a difference unless you tell me or unless you ask questions. So I really want you guys to ask questions on today's webinar. Obviously, step 3 is a very important step in doing these pre-auction deals, which is take control of the property. It's very, very important that you get control of the property. So once I have a hard money loan on the property, I have control of the property. If I take deed to the property through a warranty deed or a quick claim deed, then I have control of the property. If I'm able to put a purchase contract on the property, then I'm able to take control of the property. And what control of the property really means is that you have something that's legal or binding that ties the owner of the property into doing business, into doing real estate with you. And this control is very important because now you're in a situation where you can potentially sell the property. You're in a situation where you could foreclose on the property. So you have all of these different options for acquiring this property that you didn't previously have. And really, I feel like there's really, 4 ways that we could take control of a property. The first is a straight purchase and sale agreement. You can take control of the property that way by getting ready to purchase the property, and maybe you're going to wholesale it or something like that. But in this situation, wholesale is not extremely likely, because what you're going to do is you're going to have wholesalers in your hip pocket, because you have less than 7 days to wholesale the property, and get your money out of it and get the taxes paid all at the same time. But it is definitely a potential strategy with a property. And what that is you literally, let's say the property is worth 100, like that property on Venus. You tell them you'll purchase it for 50. You put it under a purchase contract, with a 5 day, 7 day window, which basically means you're tying it up until auction. I mean, it's really magical, because nobody can go around you and steal this deal, because if it goes to auction, it goes to auction, right? And so you're in a situation where now, if you can act on it, great. Always have a clause in there, obviously, so that you can get yourself out of the contract. And there's all kinds of clauses: subject to my partner's agreement, subject to the taxes being paid, subject to the property not being foreclosed on in some way. These are all clauses you can have in your contract for a purchase agreement. And sometimes you can even stop a foreclosure if you have a valid purchase agreement, but that just depends on the state and whether you have a good attorney or not. And so this purchase agreement can be really powerful from a wholesale standpoint, because you can get into the deal and get it under contract, really put hardly any money out of your own pocket. And, like, for example, on Venus, if I had offered him 50K, the guy would have been dropping his pants. I mean, he would have been excited, and he would have been overly excited, because that to him would have been an enormous amount of money, even though the property's worth 100. He has no idea what it's worth, because, like we said, they're either dead, mentally ill, or addicted to some type of substance. So these are the situations you're dealing with in this instance. The next thing that I would do to take control of the property, me personally, I would just do a warranty deed. I would get them to go ahead and sign over to the property to me for some cash, as little cash as humanly possible, right? Remember what you're dealing with. This property's either going to auction and they're losing it, and the sheriff's coming and kicking their butt to the curb eventually, or they're taking some cash and they're moving on with their life. So this is a really good way to get into a really good deal, is cash in their pocket, get them to sign over the deed to the property. You're still going to have to go down, obviously, and pay the taxes down at the county, but at least you know what you're dealing with. Obviously, you got to pull title and all those good things to make sure you don't have, $200,000 mortgage. But, on tax deeds and tax sales, unless it's a private money loan, you don't see a whole lot of mortgages on there very often. So it kind of gives everybody a good idea. And so the third way that I take control of a property is through a hard money loan. So I only do this when I can have first position on a property. If I can't have first lien position, and what I mean by first position is every property has different liens on it. Those liens are recorded against title. So you'll either use a guy who goes and pulls title, or you'll go down to the county, and every county has computers. Every county has a way where you can go do title research, and see who's on title to a property. I can see, like, if there's a mechanic's lien and I want to pay it off, okay, I don't mind taking second position to that. But if there's a mortgage or there's something else on there that I don't want to deal with, then I'm obviously not going to do a hard money on a deal like that, because that doesn't make any sense. You always have to pull title. Not pulling title, not knowing what's on a property, is one of the easiest ways for you to make a mistake or do a bad deal when it comes to pre-auction profits. And so I think for each and every one of you to understand how important that is, write it down, circle it, put a smiley face by it, underline it 3 times, pull title. If you don't know what's on title, you can't do a pre-auction deal. There's too many things that can go wrong. And remember, these people are dysfunctional. These are dysfunctional people. They would not be losing their property at sale unless there was some type of dysfunction, either themselves, or somebody else who's close to them. And so just don't forget that. You have to pull title. I made that clear. So now if you go into a deal and you don't pull title and you get burned, it's your fault, not my fault. One of the things I always tell people when they get to the auctions to go work on these pre-auction trips with us, when we go and visit these properties and stuff, I always tell them, like, look, if you don't get a question answered during this trip, it's your fault, not mine, because I'll answer every question. There's not a question you can ask that I will not answer. And if you ask the right questions, you'll have success in this business. And so we talked about wholesaling deals. We talked about cash for the property. We talked about a hard money loan on the property. And so those are really, the best ways to take control of the property. If there is a mortgage, you could take the property subject to, but I'm not really likely to do that very often on a tax sale property, because there usually isn't going to be a mortgage. But if there was, you could take the property subject to existing financing is one more thing that you could do. Um, it says, are you taking requests? I'm always taking requests. Would you ever give your business card to the owner? I'm going to get into marketing and business cards a little bit later, Michael, and I'll answer that question for you well as well. And so, those of you who've known me over the years know more of my story. I'll just take a brief moment to kind of share this with you because I think getting yourself over the hurdles and obstacles in doing this business is really, really important. And knowing what your capabilities are, what your possibilities are in life are really, really important. Those of you who don't know, I grew up really, really poor. Both my parents were addicts. So when I talk to these tax deed these people that owe these taxes on these properties, I know what it's like to deal with dysfunction. I dealt with it as a child growing. Matter of fact, I lived on my own. I moved out at 16. Both of my parents were dead before I was 20 years old. My dad died when I was 18. And so, I know what it's like to deal with these situations. And what I've come to find over the years is that dysfunction is not choosy. It happens to every race. It happens to people who have a lot of money and people who don't have a lot of money. It happens to people who live in a mansion and people who live in a efficiency shack in a small complex. So it happens to everyone. Having grown up really poor, I was always looking at patterns. I was always looking at who was successful. I was always looking at who was doing good. And so over the years, as I got into real estate, I always started looking at mentors. So I want to commend all of you that are on here today because you're doing the right part. You're getting mentored. You're getting the education you need to go succeed in this business. And what I've come to find in the tax deed and tax lien business is there's a lot of people that can go on line and read from government websites about tax liens and tax deeds. But there's so many parts about doing this business that none of the educators share with you guys that it's so much better that Dustin and I are here because we're doing the business every single day. And I said to myself when Dustin and I came together in business, I said, Dustin, I would love to do education on real estate with you. I'd love to help you grow your business. I said, but I won't do it unless we're doing deals every single month. I won't do it unless we're doing real transactions because you learn by doing. It doesn't mean you always have to pull the trigger, but you learn by doing. And so what I came to realize in real estate is you only way you lose is by not doing transactions. So literally in the next 30 days, and if you're slow, the next 60 days, if you're not out looking at pre-auction deals by getting into the business, then you're less likely to ever succeed. I would say a day is a week is a month is a year is a lifetime. And if you wait that long to do these kind of deals, it'll pass you by. And who knows, the rules, the regulations, how this stuff happens may very well change at one point in time. So get in while the getting's good and while these deals are there. One of the key strategies in this business that I know will really make an impact for you guys is knowing your leverage. You have the leverage in this situation. A lot of people don't realize that. You're going into the home and sometimes like I see this with investors that I call it chasing the tail or chasing the money or chasing the deal is they feel like they have to sell someone, right? Sell someone in order to get that homeowner to do business with them. They feel like they have to do a great job with it. And it's not that you need them. They need you. Write that down. You don't need them. They need you. Because if they don't do business with you, you move on to the next deal. If they don't do business with you, they're stuck. Their property's going to sale. And these are conversations you have with people to be very clear with them. And sometimes you have to say this 10 times to a homeowner to get it through their head. Your property is going to sale on Tuesday. They are going to sale on Tuesday. We're here to help. Call me because we have options. We're here to help. Make sure you reach back out to me because remember what I said to you before, 80% of them are going to be lying to you. They're going to tell you they paid the taxes. They're going to tell you that it's taken care of. And guess what? It's not taken care of. Less than half of the properties that appear on our auction lists are actually redeemed. And so there's a good chunk of the people that aren't just telling you the truth. And I understand that. I don't blame them. I don't fault them. I don't judge them for that. I mean, nobody wants to admit that they're going to struggle. Negotiate the deal. There is never only one negotiation when it comes to real estate. And I'm going to get more into negotiations a little bit, but I want you to write this down as your next strategy is negotiate, renegotiate, continue to negotiate. Don't have to agree right away. Don't feel like you have to ever take money. I mean, you ever have to take a deal that you don't really want. With pre-auction profits, you should only be doing deals that you really want. There should never be a gray area. If there's ever a gray area, walk away. It's really important. And my next key strategy for you guys is have a truly profitable exit plan. This is so important. And I think so many people don't think about this when they're getting into a property. If you don't have an exit plan, then you have no profit margin. A lot of people get into deals and they're like, well, the market value for this property is $400,000 and I'm able to get in for $200,000. So this is a really good deal. It might be. It might not be. If nobody's bought a property in that neighborhood for 3 years, then you're in a crapshoot. It might take you 2 years to sell the property. Well, if it took you 200 grand to buy it and you're stuck into that property and you don't know an exit strategy of a hard money loan or the right hard money lender to be able to get your money out of it so you can go do more deals so that you're not stuck. If you don't have an exit strategy with a buyer, if you don't know that you're going to lease to own it or you're going to sell or finance it to someone, then you don't truly have a profitable deal. And the reason I say this is because sometimes numbers have this way of playing magical games on you. Sometimes you think you have a really good deal, but then when you go up to draw up your exit plan later on after you've already purchased it, it doesn't seem to be such a really good deal. And even me, who's done so many deals, I miss 1 out of 10 times. 1 out of 10 times, I think I have a decent deal or a good deal, and it doesn't turn out to be that way, and I either break even or maybe even I lose money 1 out of 10 times. So the question is how do you never lose money? You have your exit plan already into place, and you don't break any of your tried and proven rules. Now, the only time I've ever lost money is when I break one of my rules, and it feels like every single time I break one of my rules, I lose money. And you got to have these rules in place, like never buy a property, never do a deal, right, without pulling title. Never buy a property, never do a deal without seeing the actual property in person. Or having someone on your team see the property in person and double verifying that they saw it in person, not that they just said they saw it in person. Very important with each of these strategies. Uh, it's challenging to have predictable monthly income with tax deeds and tax liens because you never truly know, whether they're going to redeem, whether they're not going to redeem, what you're going to do from an ownership standpoint. So one of the reasons I love pre-auction deals is because whether you're doing hard money or whether you're doing a lease to own with someone or you're just straight purchasing the property, it's much easier to kind of calculate your income and have cash flow coming in. I like to do a balance. So for me, I like to have deals that I get in and I flip. And then I like to have deals where I have reoccurring cash flow coming in. So there's probably three things I'm doing at all times. I'm always getting in and flipping. I'm always buying properties I'm going to hold. And I always have properties I'm doing hard money loans on. So if I'm doing all three of those strategies, now I'm balancing my income. I can predict my income and really start to write my own paycheck when it comes to the real estate business. And so I think it's very important that you understand that a big part of this overall wealth building strategy is how can you set yourself up for success in the right way, not how do you just get one deal done, one transaction. But let's go ahead and dive into another case study. So this property is 8210 Easter Street, Houston, Texas, 770-8888. We purchased it at 34K. Seller financed it the same day to the existing owner for 69K. We had a student who partnered in the deal with us, and we made a 35K profit on this deal. We had actually multiple students partner in on this deal. We bought this in our fund that we do for co-investing with our students. And so, and actually, a few of our students on the line today are students who actually have ownership in this property. I won't say their names, but they have ownership in this property. So when we first saw Easter, this is kind of, we rolled down a street and we're like, oh, this is going to be bad because it was in a C minus neighborhood. We were going through C minus neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods on the way there, and then we kind of turned the corner, and the houses are just a little bit nicer. But then this property backs up to a school on the other side of it. It is a great property at the end of a cul-de-sac. So there's only two other houses once the street ends, and then it dead ends right where that fence is that you can see there on the right. And so we're like, oh, that's kind of nice. So as we walk up to this property, and you'll see me walking up to the property actually there, that's me in a blue sweatshirt. And as I walk up to this property, remember, I'm not going dressed all super nice, right, when I'm going to talk to someone who's losing their property. I'm usually in jeans and a sweatshirt during the winter, and I'm in, khaki shorts and a polo during the summer when I go up and talk to people. And what I kind of find is when you dress too nice, it really turns people off when you go up to houses. So I'm there in a blue sweatshirt, and I go up and I talk to the homeowner. Actually, no, forgive me. I did not go talk to the homeowner right away. The first thing we did is we went and knocked on the doors. Nobody answered. Knocked on the doors again. Nobody answered. And there was a car in the driveway. So we were kind of like, well, I'm not sure why nobody was answering. And so we went to the neighbor's house, the White House there on the left. And that's actually the aunt of the woman who lives in this house. And she wouldn't answer even though there was two cars in her driveway. So finally we went to the house that was catty corner, the other third house that was on that street, and we knocked on the door. And the lady answers the phone, and she goes, I said, do you know who lives at that house there, the yellow house there on the corner? And she goes, yeah, that's my cousin. So actually all three of these people that live here were relatives in one way or another. And she goes, yeah, that's my cousin. And I said, do you know that her house is going to be lost at the auction in 2 days? This is on a Sunday. And she goes, no. And I goes, do you think she knows her house is going to be lost at the auction on Sunday? And she's like, no, she would never want to leave there. She would never want to move out. And I said to her, I said, well, is she the owner of the house? She goes, I don't really know. I don't know who she's the owner. I know we all live here. She goes, like, I don't get into her business like that. Um, and it was interesting because, so I said, well, can you call her? I said, do you have her phone number? We want to make sure she knows what's going on and those kind of things. And so she called her on the phone. She didn't answer. I gave the lady my phone number. I gave her my team member Carol's phone number. I said, have her call either one of us. Have her call us today because we can probably stop this from happening and we can probably help her out. And we got a call from Agnes later that day, and she said she really didn't want to lose the house, and basically said that she had a daughter, and she wanted to keep living there. And she said she wasn't the owner, that her uncle was the owner of the house, that it had been their grandmother's house. She died, and Agnes had already been living there for a long time. Agnes has lived there for like 20 years. And then her uncle was the one that the deed had kind of gotten passed down to. But she said she had bought it from her uncle, but they had never done the proper paperwork with the deed and all that stuff. So it was her responsibility to pay the taxes, but she wanted to stay in the house. So it was just this big mess. And so when I went up to the house, I knocked on the door and I talked with her for a little bit. And Agnes is a pretty good human being. I mean, really, like, probably had her act together more than 90% of the people I've ever seen with tax sales and those kind of things. And so she said, the most important thing in the world was her, so that it's actually her granddaughter. She called her daughter. She had taken custody of her, and is that her granddaughter wasn't homeless in the next week. And I just said to her, I said, I can guarantee that if you work on this deal or you work on this transaction with us, you will not be homeless a week from now. Um, and I'll put that in writing. I'll guarantee it that you will not be homeless in a week. So if we can work out a deal where I can make sure that you guys can continue to live here, that you can make payments on the house and you can afford this house and you can do it, then is that something you want to do with me? And she said, sure, absolutely. She goes, that's exactly what I want. To this day, she calls us a godsend. And so essentially what had happened is she'd kind of purchased it from her uncle, but not really purchased it from her uncle. And then she was making payments to her uncle, and then she stopped making payments to him. And then he was making the taxes. And then, so it's just all this back and forth. And what I really have come to find out is Agnes is just absolutely awful with bills and money. Probably one of the worst people for taking care of that stuff you've ever seen. And I'm not sure why, because we actually take a monthly draw out of her bank account, just a direct withdrawal out of her bank account every month. She's worked the same job for 9 years. She has good money, good income, but she's a spender, so she has the money. It's going to get spent, and she's just in a situation where we had to step in and do the deal. So we are actually able to purchase this property from her at 34,000, and seller financed it back to purchased it from her uncle at 34,000, able to sell it or finance it back to her at 69,000, and we're currently getting our monthly payments on it. And when her credit improves, which I know how to help her do, she just doesn't have any credit. It's not that she has bad credit. We know how to help her improve her credit. She'll refinance us out of the home, and we will move on with a great profit in our pockets. Um, this is kind of one of those interesting situations where we just stuck in there to the last minute. They kept thinking they were going to figure it out. They kept thinking they were going to borrow the money from somebody. They kept thinking about 30 different ways to do it, and we literally stuck in there to the last minute in order to be able to get this deal done. So why the tax deed and tax lien sales, why they work, what is the magic of this timing, why does it work so fantastically well? What I've come to find is that they only work for the plain simple reason that the timing is so great. That as long as you do this 1 week before the auction, people go into desperation mode. They go into a mode where they need to do deals. And I know people are like, well, that's kind of has to be very specific. Yeah, it's very specific. I think it's funny when I've shared this with one or two people. They're like, oh, well, I don't want to do business in that short time window, and I don't want to do business this way. Like, look, you will never any other way in your lifetime, I believe, find a deal that I can get control of the property for 9 grand that's worth $100,000. You will never in your lifetime find a property you can buy for 34K and resell it the same day that you take control of it for 69K and make a 100% profit in less than 24 hours. You will never find those kind of deals unless you do the deals like this, the way I'm talking about it. And so, I mean, you can go and try and do it 3 weeks beforehand. You can go try and do it 4 months beforehand. But the reality is it's the 1 week before that makes it work. The other thing, the reason these deals work is because the fear of loss by the property owner. It's something that these people already have some pretty screwed up things in their life in order for their property to be going to sale. So the lots of times the house, the home is the last remaining thing that they're holding on to. Most of the time they've lost their relationships. They've lost other things, and the home is just the last remaining thing that they want to keep their hands on. Remember, when we talk to them, right? When we talk to them and we're negotiating the deal, it's always a property. When we want them to call us and we're doing marketing, and we want to scare them into giving us a phone call, because remember, people only act when they're in pain, then we call it a home because they don't want to lose their home. Just remember, those are semantics of negotiations. Like I said, all the money in this business and this part of the game is made in negotiations more than anywhere else. So the fear of loss by the property owner. The owner has run out of options is another reason this works. They've explored options. I mean, at this point, they've gone to the cash. They've gone down, the cash for title for their car. They've tried to borrow money from people. They're in desperation mode at this point. Otherwise, they would have paid their taxes. Now, of course, there's always the people that just play the game and they procrastinate to the last moment. There's people that just don't pay their taxes till they absolutely have to, because the plain simple fact is there maybe the real estate flippers and they're trying to get someone else to pay it for them or different things, but they've run out of options. So what you can do is help them have options, help them have a way that they can do it. So um, as the owner has run out of options, you are the solution. This is all of this is like a it's a not a magical game. It's not a math game, but it's a game of perception, and it's a game of influence. And you can be there consistently offering help while being very real with them. Because if you're not real with them, then the property ends up going to auction. So you have to be consistently offering help, while on the other hand, and you're saying this in your marketing, which I'll show you in a little bit, um, you're literally going to be saying, you're going to lose this property at auction. You're going to lose this property at auction. On Tuesday, you're going to be foreclosed on. Then the sheriffs are going to come and evict you from your property. They're going to kick you to the curb. They're going to put your stuff on the street. So you have to have that constant, consistent balance, and that's why these deals work. Follow through all the way to the auction. I literally will be calling, even stopping by people that are losing the property the morning of the auction, because they'll tell me all the time that they're going to take care of it. They're going to take care of it, and then the morning of the auction, sometimes that's when the reality sets in. Now, if you do what I call our time bombs, which is if you haven't figured out a solution by Sunday night, or by 24 hours, by whatever, depending on when your auction is. But let's say your auction's on Tuesday. I say if you haven't figured out a solution by Sunday night, you're just not going to figure out an option for this thing. I just want to be honest with you. I've seen this 1,000 times. And what that does is typically gets a lot of these people to take action on Monday to do business with us versus waiting till they lose their property. And so that time bomb is a really good influencer when it comes to negotiating these deals and these transactions. Um, the other key thing is you know how to work these deals, and really very few other people do. And I don't know why nobody teaches it this way, but the key is, and I think maybe we just came on to something that nobody was really trying, or maybe the people that are trying it, aren't really sharing it and teaching it. I don't know, but we know how to work these deals. We know how to influence. We know how to talk to these homeowners. We know what our different entrance strategies are. I gave you 4 different ways of acquiring the property. I gave you 3 different ways of exit strategies for getting out of the properties. So you know how to get these deals done, because you know how to work these deals and how to work these transactions. And in a minute, you're going to have the paperwork, and we're going to get more into the negotiations. So the next thing is, the reality for the owner. The reality is they're going to auction on Tuesday, and you have to say this again and again. They know who you are and how to reach you. So when I get into the marketing, this is key, is you need to not just be another person who came to their house. You need to not just be another person who's trying to buy the property. You have to talk to them. You have to get to know them. You need to be polite but firm. They need to know that they need to take you serious, but also know you're there to help them. And so there's this constant yin and and yang. Another reason why these deals will work for you, if you're flexible and willing to act quickly. This is not a game where you don't do your homework beforehand. Once you know you have somebody who's interested in doing a pre-auction deal, then you need to get your homework done. You've got to do your title. You've got to do your comparables. You got to know what's going on. Because if you do that, then when you make them an offer or they accept an offer, boom, you can act quickly. You need to have some capital available in order to do this business. This is not a no money strategy business. I think the only part of this that's a no money strategy business, I mean, and it can work, and it is effective. But I also think you're maybe setting the seller up for a little bit of false expectations. But if you're going to wholesale it, and you're going to put a purchase contract on it, and you're going to wholesale the house to an investor, and you have a week to do that, you can get deals done. But for 5 to 10,000 in cash, you can do deals in this business. And the willingness to act quickly, the willingness to meet them late at night, the willingness to drive down to the county office and pay the taxes, and then go get the lien recorded. All of these things are very important. I've said this again and again. Never believe they have paid the taxes till the auction. I can't tell you how many investors that like it takes the 10th, 20th, 30th, 40th time before they realize they have not paid their taxes. Never accept their word on that, ever, ever, ever. So let's keep on rolling here, everybody. Marketing for the deals. So to me, door knocking beats out all other methods. I think I've made that very, 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 very clear for all of you. And so there's just no better strategy, no better way than door knocking. So as we're doing these deals and transactions, you got to go knock on the doors. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. That is a marketing strategy. There's the letter campaigns. So we typically use at least 3 different letters. And I'll talk a little bit more about, what kind of ink, what kind of envelopes, how to do that in a little bit. There's bandit signs, but not the bandit signs that you're thinking about where you just see them on the corners and the curbs and different things. I'm talking about very strategically placed bandit signs. A great, great movie for you to go and watch if you haven't seen it with Will Smith is called Focus. And then you'll start to kind of understand, or you'll start to see what I'm talking about when it comes to why I put bandit signs where I put bandit signs. But I'll give you more of that philosophy in the next thing. Michael, we're going to talk about this a little bit. Business cards with the owners, business cards with the renters, business cards with the neighbors. This is definitely a very effective marketing strategy for getting people to call you. And then the last one is the door flyers. The door flyers. So I think these are all really, really huge. But I want to do one big is the combination of all of these together in a concentrated effort for a homeowner is called guerrilla marketing. And guerrilla marketing is kind of, it's warfare. You're literally hitting them six ways to Sunday with marketing. And this is a great way for you to be able to really knock this thing out of the park with people. So let's get into door knocking. We've been talking about door knocking throughout the day, and I think this is something that scares a lot of people. And when my students come on auction trips, pre-auction trips with me, I make every single one of them get out of the vans and go knock on doors. And that's probably the most comfortable way ever to do it first, because you have 12 other people with you in a van. But I will tell you, whether it's the little blonde white girl that I had go talk to, a 6'8" African American male at one of the houses, or it's the Hispanic gentleman who had never been in nice neighborhoods that I made go and talk to the owner of a mansion. What they all came to realize is that there is no difference between person A and person B when it comes to the life problems that they have. Door knocking is door knocking. Talking to people is talking to people. Listening to people is listening to people. Now, the person in a high-end mansion or neighborhood is going to have more options at their hands than the person that's in a rougher neighborhood. But I will tell you right now that talking to them is exactly the same. And I've made everything from an 80-year-old student on one of the trips to a 19-year-old student on one of the trips go and knock on doors, and it works for everyone. One of my rules is door knocking is I don't believe in going door knocking by yourself. I believe you should always have someone with you when you go door knocking. If you can't find at least one other person who's fascinated or wanting to do real estate, then you're just not trying. There's local real estate clubs, there's meetup groups, there's your own network, there's your own family, there's your friends. People want to do real estate. Matter of fact, I don't know in America, and Canada might be a little bit different, but still, I've met thousands and thousands of Canadians who want to do real estate in America. But I don't know any American that at some point in time during a 10-year, 20-year lifespan that doesn't think of how they can make money from real estate because they've seen somebody else do it. And so it's constantly on their mind. So door knocking is the first thing that I do is make sure that you always have a big smile on your face, right? That you're always very, very polite. When I knock on doors, I tend to knock on the door once, wait about 30 to 40 seconds, knock on the door a second time, wait 30 to 40 seconds, knock on the door a third time, wait 30 to 4 seconds. Then I walk out to the driveway, and then I wait probably about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. What I find is that strategy has gotten me more doors open than any other strategy. I know it kind of sounds crazy. We're just talking about door knocking, but there is a way to do it. Typically you want to wear blue colors versus red colors. Red colors scare people. It makes people think of authority. It makes people think of fire. It's not the right colors. If you wear blue neutral colors, less people feel like you're aggressive. Less people feel like you're there to do something negative. So you typically want to wear a blue shirt of some kind, shape, or form. I know these are very intricate things, but these things work. I mean, it's proven with thousands of houses that get people to come to the door. Um, the first thing is I do at houses. I usually probably ask um, them one or two questions. Do you know what's going on? Or I might, depending on the person, I might say what's happening. And people will go into it. If you just ask those questions and you just be quiet, they'll start to go into their story. They'll start to go into their situation. If they don't really say much, I say, well, are you the owner, or are you renting the property? And if they say renter, then I have one conversation with them, obviously. If they say owner, I have a completely different conversation with them. Just because they say the owner, just remember, ladies and gentlemen, does not mean they're the owner. The next thing that we do is we knock on two doors to the left, two doors to the right, and at least three houses across the street until we get somewhere with somebody. So when you're going door knocking, you could knock on as many as seven houses doors, not including the primary residence. So you could knock on eight houses doors there. Um, as a part of an overall strategy, having a group of people to go with is really fantastic. And when it comes to private money and it comes to lending and different things, it actually can be a huge advantage to you to take a group of people out looking at properties, because what you do is you show people how much work this business can be, and then people are like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather just give you my money because you're the expert out here doing this every day. And so it's a strategy that has worked really effectively for us in real estate. And so door knocking is probably my tried and proven most guaranteed way to get a deal. I guarantee if you go to an auction that has 100 properties and you go knock on 100 doors, I guarantee you do this and you do it diligently, you will have a deal within less than 30 days. In your first 30 days. I'm assuming you have an auction that you can get to in the first 30 days. I'm telling you that. You guarantee it. It's just how this business works. Um, the next thing is the letters. So let's go ahead. I'm going to click off of this screen. I'm going to go onto another screen, and we're going to start opening up these letters. So let's talk about our first letter for tax properties that we have here. And so you can see we have the date here on the right. Keep your home at XYZ address. Dear homeowner, the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office has listed your property for sale at the February 2nd, 2016 tax auction. The records indicate that your property has past due taxes uh, in the amount of blank. If you have already addressed this matter, then please disregard this notice. Many homeowners have needlessly lost their property due to a lack of knowledge about their options or due to non-action. As a result, majority of homeowners lose their home. Remember, I always said, we're here to help, but we're also firm with the reality. Homeowners lose their home. If you do nothing, your home will be sold at the tax auction on February 2nd, 2016. We can help, but you must call quickly. Call now. Contact our property tax specialist. And then it has a name, phone number. It's always better to have a local phone number if you can have a local phone number. You'd be amazed that, like, I'm so used to working internationally or working nationally that I don't even think about area code. But when you're dealing with these types of properties, it's really good to have a local number. If you don't know how to get that, you can use a company called Ring Central to get a local phone number. Also, Google, I think it's Google phone numbers. Or Google numbers. They have their own phone numbers. You can get a local number that way too. And then just literally have it set up so that it forwards to your cell phone, which is really, really good. So let's take a look at the second letter. So the second letter is usually what I will put on the first letter. Actually, let me go back to the first letter. So the first letter is usually a letter that I will put on legal, like a off white with black print, and I will typically this type will go in like a business envelope, and I'll try and make it look very, very official. It just makes it easier. Okay. It's a business envelope, off-white paper in the envelope, and it looks very, very official. The next letter is something I'm more likely to put on what I call a yellow letter, which is I'm going to put it on yellow legal notepad paper. I'm going to use red ink when it's printed, and I'm going to make sure it has a personal signature on there. So this is, once again, keep your home at XYZ address. I'm here to help. What the county does in seizing, taking, stealing, and robbing is wrong. I should say and robbing is wrong. If you want to make some money out of this, we're here to help. We can help you, but you must call quickly. Call now. Contact our property specialist. Phone number. It's not too late. Sincerely, Dutch Mendenhall. So this is my second letter that we use with the marketing campaigns. I'm just going to click over to the notes and make sure that everybody's hearing me and that you guys are seeing my screen so that I'm not talking about letters that not all of you can see. So you guys let me know real quick that you're hearing me. You can see the screen, that we're all on the same page. Just doing this quick check. Yes, says Harvey. Very good. Thank you, yes. Who else besides Harvey? Thanks, Tony. Very good. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Terry. Okay, good, good. Enough of you are there. Good. And so these are the letters that we send out to the properties. People give us a phone call. These are the first two letters. And then the third letter, this might be my favorite letter. So this is really a very psychological kind of mind meld with people. Keep your home at XYZ address. Dear homeowner, do not know if I can help you in this difficult situation. If I can help you explore your options, you then could make your own decisions, giving them back their ownership. If you're not informed, then someone else may take your home, or they will make the decision for you. Protect your rights and call. We can help you, but you must call quickly. Call now. Contact our property tax specialist. Make sure you don't use counselor on here because I can maybe say legal. You also want to say property tax. You don't want to say tax specialist because there's also some legal stuff with that. Remember always before you use these letters, you may want to run them by your own attorneys. Now, you can see that there is a grammatical error here, or they will make the decision for you. That's intentional. So when you get the letter, do not change that part of it. We've just sent out thousands and thousands of these letters. We play around with different things, do what we call split testing, and we find that some letters, Michael says, do we get copies of these letters? Yes, you do, Michael. So what I'm going to do, yes, I know, that, Michael, that I'm going too quickly, right, for you guys to be able to write down word for word every one of these letters. So I'm going to make sure that these letters get mailed out to each and every one of you. And now that's kind of a good time for me to do a brief pause while Michael asks a question. I want to say, everybody, just to take a moment. We've been going through a lot today. We've actually covered a ton of information really fast. It's like drinking from a fire hose. So I want you to take a moment, and I just want you to take a moment and just write down two questions, two things that have been popping down in your mind. You're not going to ask them right now. We may take time later to answer more questions, ask more questions. But I just want you to take a moment because I only got 4 minutes before we all take a break for lunch. So just take a little bit of time to go ahead and write those questions down. And then give me a yes in the question box when you have two questions down. And if you don't put yes in the question box, then later I'm going to refuse to answer your questions. Just kidding. So bad when you tell jokes or you crack jokes yourself on a webinar, but then you can't tell whether people are laughing or not. So now I don't even know if it was funny or not funny. So, and then very good. Keep writing your questions down. I'll let you guys do that in silence for a second. Very good. Okay, good. So now that you guys kind of wrote down those questions, I'm going to go through one more marketing piece for this part of the call, and then we'll go ahead and take a break for lunch at that point in time. Get back on the slides. Very good. The next thing is bandit signs. So with bandit signs, we didn't have an actual picture of one of our bandit signs here. I'll probably have a picture of one of those for the future. Tax help now. That's what we put on our sides. Tax help now. The only other thing is we put on there is tax property hotline. Tax property hotline. Write that down. Okay? Good. Now what I do is I take a look at the property that I have in mind. And literally you are only targeting one property at a time when you do this, because You might get random phone calls and those kind of things. But my idea is if I know that I only do this when I know an owner lives in the house. If I know it's a renter, I won't do this strategy. But if I know it's an owner in the house, I'll put bandit signs. And what I'll do is I'll get out my map and I'll take a look at where is the most likely direction they are to drive. Are they most likely to drive to a freeway? Are they most likely to drive to a liquor store? Are they most likely to drive to a grocery store? And so what I will do is see the most common route that these people drive, and then I will post signs, at least 4 signs between where they live and the most common route that I think they're most likely to drive. So obviously, with one sign being on their own personal street corner in both directions. What I have come to find that this is the greatest way to get phone calls from bandit signs on tax deed and tax sale properties. The funny part is I put these signs up typically on a Friday night, and I will typically take them down Monday, or I'll just look at it as an investment and I'll never take them down. But if I just find that that gets me my phone calls and that gets me the relationship with the homeowners. And this is a part of the guerrilla marketing. And so a couple key things. Having the right words on there, I think, is very important. And I think the other thing that's very important for us to pay attention to is the where to put them. If you just put them out randomly, it's not a real good strategy for getting tax deed and tax sale properties. Bandit signs are a decent strategy for getting phone calls on day-to-day real estate, but it's probably one of the better strategies to get direct tax deed and tax sale properties. So tax property hotline is such a great bandit sign. I found that to be probably the best one that I've gotten. So we're going to go ahead and take a break for lunch now, ladies and gentlemen. I want to keep to the schedule that I promised for today. So go ahead and feel free to write down some more questions. We will be restarting at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Everybody have a great lunch. I will turn on some music for your pleasure. If you like my music, tell me. If you don't, then keep it to yourself. All right, everybody. I will talk to all of you very soon. Have a great lunch. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to be getting started here in just a minute after the wonderful lunch break. I ate well. I hope you did too. I'm going to give everybody just about a minute to 2 minutes here to jump back on the line. Give me a yes in the question box if you're here, because I can get started if I know if everyone is here. But we did not lose anybody during the break. Everybody stayed. We actually gained a new person during the break, which is good. Trevor Harvey said yes. Janice said yes. Terry said yes. Susan said yes. Very good, very good. So we got quite a few. Tony said yes. Oh no, Tony's asking questions already. How do you deal with title? Do you use a title company? So I'll answer that question in a minute, Tony. Very good. So I'm going to get started with questions here in just a minute. Everybody else, write in more questions. That's good. The more questions, the more value you get from today, the better the investment you made by the better the question you make. So let's get ready to rock and roll, everybody. We're going to ask some more questions. Michael's here, yes. Good, Michael. Our good Canadians are here. I say Canada, and Dustin says America. So we're all ready to go here. Let's get going. We got 1 more minute, and let me get at least one more question from you guys. Very good. So I'm going to start with the very first question that I got. This is a good questions. Michael asked suggestions for a proper business card. So for me, business cards in this situation are very much they need to be simple, right? And what I like to do is when I give somebody a business card, I like to hand them the business card, and I like them to go ahead and have him turn it over, and then I tell them a phone number to write on the back of it, because it creates a better mental imprint for the person when they have to write it down. And even though my name's on the business card, I have them write my name on there. And so my business cards will usually say Brandon Mendenhall, which is my first name, and then I'll tell them to write Dutch on the back of the business card, so it creates a better imprint on them for the long run. I almost always use white business cards because then you're able to write on white business cards easier. I always use like a cardstock versus a laminate because you're able to write on them again. It has the phone number on there, has a email address, has my name. And lots of times when I'm out doing real estate, I don't even put the name of a company. I think when you put the name of a company, it doesn't pull people in quite as much. So when I'm out doing real estate, it's just my name, phone number, email address, and sometimes at the top of them I put "we can help," but it's not necessary. So that's what I do with business cards. Um, I give business cards to the neighbors, like I said earlier. I give business cards to the renters. I make sure that my business card is flowing with people that are surrounding the properties. Tony Evans asked a great question. Uh, do you ever feel guilty about investing? Have you ever been accused from stealing from people? I let me go back in my history. You know, I'm dealing with a situation right now on one of my properties where originally, um, it's a foreclosure, and originally I offered the gentleman uh, 15,000 to walk away to get rid of my headache because he was being difficult. And there's such a good profit margin in it. I paid 25 for the property, and the property's worth 220. I have about $135,000 mortgage on it, and I made a pretty big offer. I wanted to get the deal done. I wanted to get him out of there. I wanted to get moved on. Then I had to continue with legal proceedings and different things, and he's really been a headache. And so each step of the way, I've brought the offer down, and now it's down to 2,500 for him to sign a redemption letter, releasing his right of redemption. And no, I in that situation, I really don't feel guilty. I gave the guy every which way possible to walk away with more money in his pocket, and yet he does feel pretty screwed. But the bottom line is it's not us in these situations that have created this headache. It is there's two things here. One is they've created their own world, right? And frankly, if people take out a mortgage or people don't pay their taxes, it's either I'm going to buy it or somebody else is going to buy it, and and it's not me that's taking the property away from them. Remember that it's not you that's taking the property away from them. It's the county, it's the government that has these laws and regulations. We are actually buying the property from the county, from the government. We're not necessarily buying the property from them. And so when I'm in a situation where somebody's going to lose their house in a couple days, and I can give them money to walk away with cash in their pocket, I can give them, a fresh start versus them having nothing from the situation, then I feel pretty good about the situation. I'll tell you, on both of the deals I talked about, Easter and Venus, the gratitude and the thankfulness from both of them was huge. And if I have to foreclose on the Venus property, we'll see what happens. But what I'll end up doing is giving them money for keys, cash for keys they call it, and they'll walk away. I almost guarantee it. They'll walk away happier than they would have if I wouldn't have done what I did. And so that's how I see it in my mind. And I'll tell you is there's times when I could be harder, or I could be, I guess I could be greedy, but I'm not. And so, I try to negotiate a fair deal. I try to find out what they truly want to get their life restarted. And I'm really helping people restart their lives. And probably a small part of that's a little bit of justification. And at the same time, I believe that this is a better option for them. And so we are a part of the solution. We are not a part of the problem. And so the problem is um, their own mental health, their own addictions, their own ability not to clean things up if somebody passes, and the other problem is the county with the taxes for them. So it's not us. And so I feel like I'm doing a real good service when I'm helping people in this way. One of our students said, so on Venus, the county let you pay the taxes without Ed being present. Guess you'll be teaching this to me as I've missed everything. He didn't have a connection in the middle of the webinar. He was driving. So we're recording everything, everybody, just so you know. Everything's recorded, so you will be able to go back and listen to the webinar to watch it again, because I'm sure there's some things you may want to hear again, like some of the scripts and different things. So we are recording everything for you. Yes. So I don't know that every county across America is this way, across the U.S., but I do know that on the Venus property, I actually had Ed, the owner of the property, meet me downtown, and we actually signed the paperwork in the back of my pickup truck, and we got it done. And and then if he had needed to go in there with me, he would have gone in there with me. But I went in and they said no, and they gave me the receipt for the taxes and everything. So that is good. That's an important note, though, is that you go down and pay the taxes. You don't give them the money to go down and pay the taxes, because if you give them the money to go down and pay the taxes, what's going to happen is they might pocket the money. Then the house still gets foreclosed on. Now you're out. Now, if you got your lien recorded before the actual auction and they didn't notify you, you can circle back on it, but it's a real headache, and it's going to cost you money worth with an attorney. If the owner answers the door after we knock, do you still suggest we knock on the 7 doors you mentioned? I might, if I see someone if I see someone, because neighbors are curious. They're not even curious; they're nosy. And so if I see someone looking out their window, I see someone in their driveway, I see someone drive up, into, or getting ready to get into a car, I may still go ahead and talk to them. But if the owner answers the door and they show me, the property, then I'm not as likely to need to talk to a neighbor. But if it's available and it's easy, then yes, I still talk to one of the neighbors. Really good question. Tony asked another question. How do you deal with title searchers? Do you use a title company? So this is just it depends, right? So there's parts of the country where it's good to have a title agent on your team, on your side, and sometimes you can get a title person to pull the title for you. There's parts of the country where it's the county records is accessible online, and it's fairly easy to go pull title yourself. Me personally, I like to find someone who specializes in pulling title. There's actually companies, or there's even people, that's what they do for a living. Typically, you go down and you find them either at the auctions, or you'll find them online, or you'll find them down at the county office in the days before the auction. Sometimes they're just down there pulling records and things. So I usually like to find someone else to pull title for me. I usually pay about $20 per title pull. If it's a rush, I usually pay $40. If it's an extensive sense of search, I may pay 60. So it's not too bad. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's all comes down. A part of that is networking and doing research to find title agents. I also believe that sometimes we're able to send you that resource. So I know with a part of this program, you guys got our demographic research. Part of that with the pre-auction profits program that you guys are a part of. So we're actually pulling connections and contacts, if we either have them or we're doing the research and pulling them for you down at the auctions, which is really good. Is there a one auction a year? How do you do it? Well, Harvey, if there's only one auction a year in your area, one is it gives you more time to do research. I'm more likely to do a letter campaign in a city where there's only one auction a year, to start pre-building my relationships with people. But typically, even with only one auction a year, almost the deals that you'll get done will be before that one auction. I thought that tax deeds were always clear of any mortgages. Are they? So tax deeds are clear of mortgages. So sometimes what I'm buying, I do buy HOA foreclosures because they're also happen at the tax sales a lot of time. And I've kind of started to get a little bit of a niche with being able to get the mortgage companies to work with me. That's not necessarily a part of the program we're teaching today, but so what I like to do on an HOA foreclosure is I'll pull what the mortgage is on it by doing the title search, and I'll get a really good idea of what's going on with the property from a loan standpoint. That way I know if I have to pay off the loan that I still have a really good deal. Sometimes you can get them to work with you, which is really good. So these are great questions. Keep them flowing, everybody. I think the questions are very beneficial, very helpful for everybody involved on the webinar, on the training, the workshop today. So we talked about bandit signs. That was the last piece of marketing we talked about. Marketing for business cards was the next thing. I've already discussed these. I make sure that neighbors have the business cards on the properties that we're doing. I'm just going to move this over so you guys can see it a little better. And so the neighbors, you got to give the business cards to the neighbors. Give his business card to the owner. It's a good strategy. What I like to do is make sure that they know that they write my information, my cell phone number on the back of the business card. I don't leave business cards in mailboxes or on doors or those kind of things. I have a flyer that I'm going to show you guys. I think as the very next step. You know what? We don't have a slide for the flyer, but let me go ahead. I'm going to show you the flyer we use when we do deals. So this is a flyer that we use when we're doing deals, and it's a really good flyer for transactions. Let me go ahead and see if I can get this full screen for you guys. So this gives you a good idea what the flyer looks like. So tax help hotline, keep your home. If you want to make some money out of this, we're here to help. We can help you, but you must call quickly. Call now. Contact our property tax specialist, Dutchman Hall, at this phone number. It's not too late. Sincerely, tax help hotline. Call us immediately for help. So this is a flyer we use. So what I do with these flyers is I don't put them on the doors of the properties. Is when I go in and visit properties, and actually some of you who are going to the auction with me this next month will see this. We've started leaving these on the right next to the door. So if you have a front door, typically to the right of it, we'll take a little piece of tape and we'll tape the flyer to the window. Because typically what happens is when it's on people's door, they actually tend to get more annoyed. And we've actually done this where we've put flyers on doors and then we sat and watched to see how people reacted. And what we did is we basically took a neighborhood and we just blanketed 10 houses that we could see all 10, and we just kind of compared how people reacted and how people responded to the flyers. And we find if you tape it on the door, they're likely just to crumble it up right away. If you tape it to the right of the door, just on the, like the wood or the window that they have right next to their front door, that people are much more likely to pick the flyer up and take it inside with them. And we've also gotten more callbacks this way and split testing it over the years. So the flyer works really good. So when we go to houses and they're not home, we leave this flyer, and that works out really well for us. So it's interesting that the more we put out into the world, the more input we have coming back in. And that's really what marketing is, everybody. Marketing is the ability to put information out into the world, and typically you're going to find you're going to get much better deals, much better transactions, because you're going to get more inbound phone calls, and then you're not having to chase the deals. The deals are coming to you. I think that's always something for everyone to keep in mind at all times is you really need to be in a place where you're putting the information out and it's coming back to you. You're putting the information out and it's coming back to you. I definitely, if you're taking notes, write that one down because it's key. I think the person that does the best marketing, that does the most marketing, will get more deals coming to them and obviously make more money. And I know there's costs associated. There's costs with business cards. There's costs with bandit signs. There's costs with flyers. But let's say you print 1,000 flyers. You probably would never need to print that many. But let's say you print 1,000 flyers, you do 100 bandit signs, and you send out 2,000 letters, right? And you paid, for all of that, maybe you paid a few grand. Well, I can guarantee you night and day that if you spend $2,000 on marketing in order to market to these properties, you're going to make 10 times, 20 times, 30 times that amount of money on the inbound phone calls and the deals, the deal flow that you create. And the key is being in real estate's all about deal flow. Being in real estate's all about pipeline. It's always about the next deal. It's not about the deal. So it's very important that you guys consistently, constantly are marketing when you want to do deals and transactions. And just back to Harvey's question, when there's only a once a year auction or twice a year auction, I'm much more likely to do more marketing than when I have an auction every single month where I'm going directly to properties. Now we're going to talk about some of the paperwork. The cool part about all of this paperwork is there's a hard money note that you want to be ready to be able to do fairly effectively, fairly easily. There's a warranty deed. Sometimes they call it a quick claim deed. It depends on where you are and what the rules are. In order for get people to sign over to the property. If there's a mortgage on it, it's good to get a power of attorney. And some people are like, well, what if it's a tax foreclosure. Well, if it's a tax foreclosure though, and you're doing a pre-auction deal, the mortgage isn't going to get wiped out. So you need to take that into account when you're doing these transactions and stuff. So it's very important for you to note that as a part of it. There's an authorization to release document, and then there's what I also call the ultimate tax deed secret paperwork, which I don't know that anybody else teaches it or shares this, so I'm going to share that with you right now. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is you know what, let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and click over to the paperwork, and I'm going to start showing you guys this one by one, each piece of it. And so, and there's also a purchase and sale agreement, which is good for you to have. And so what I say to you all the time is always have this paperwork with you at all times. Always have a couple sets of it so that if you're out driving properties and somebody's ready to do a deal right then and there, it's very important. So this piece of paperwork is called an authorization for release of records. And if you can have a notary when you do this stuff, it is great. If you don't have a notary, take a picture of their driver's license, and you may be able to get a notary. You know, I'm not giving you any legal advice, but you may be able to get a notary to sign it when you have the address and the signature and the photo ID of the person when you have a trusted notary. So this piece of paperwork is an authorization to release. And what this does is it allows you to talk to any lien holders about what's going on with the property. It allows you to talk to any mortgage companies about what's going on with the property. And so it really gives you a real strong ability to communicate, and this gives you ability to negotiate. It gives you ability to take over payments on mortgages and those kind of things. So it can be a very, very useful piece of paperwork to have the people sign. And you just want to be able to explain to them, hey, like, look, this doesn't give me any rights to your property. This doesn't give me any control over your mortgage, but it at least allows me to communicate and discuss things and be able to negotiate things. And sometimes before I do a deal, I might go ahead and get them to go ahead and do an authorization for release of records and information with financial institutions, because then what this allows me to do is kind of know what I'm getting into sometimes before I actually go and do the deal. Sometimes, you know, you might have a mortgage from 2004, and so you don't think the mortgage, you know, you might think it's been really, or even 1994, and you might think the mortgage is paid down a whole lot, but they also might be 2 years behind in the mortgage, and we won't know that till we're able to talk to the mortgage company and see what the mortgage company is going to make us do, either pay it off or be able to bring it current and take over payments on it and that kind of thing. So that's the authorization to release. The general warranty deed is fairly simple and direct. It's a one-page document. Notice of continuity rights. You're a natural person may strike any of the following from this instrument before it is filed in public records, just Social Security or driver's license. So the state of Texas, County of Harris is just what we had this one created for. You have your grantee, right? You have the grantee's mailing address, grantor's mailing address. That's, you know, you, and that's the seller of the property, obviously. Now, you want to make sure that anybody who's on title is on this document. So if they're married, you need both the husband and wife, even if the other is not on title. That's something for you to make sure that you have, because married, you always have to have them both on there. But, you know, we're dealing with the situation right now on one of our properties where the husband and wife were on title, but the wife died and she gave her equity in the house to the daughter. And so we needed the daughter and the father to both sign this document to sign the property over. Okay. It says $10 here. You can do whatever amount of money you want. So you may want to change that document to have it hold and those kind of things. You want to make sure you get the proper property description, not just the address, but the property description on this document as well. Here's our real estate purchase agreement. It's a general, you know, purchase agreement for the state of Texas. You might want to check with your local agents and be able to get this type of agreement on there. Notice how I already have the earnest money deposit on there so that they're not asking me for a deposit. Sometimes deposits are negotiable, but if you already have it on there, then lots of times they assume it's there. If you don't have any money in there where you have the earnest money deposit, the problem is then they may ask for a couple $1,000s, especially if you're using this contract as a wholesale contract in order to sell the property and stuff. There's all these notices. So this is a good purchase and sale agreement that you want to be able to have to do deals. I'm typically going to use this when I'm either buying the property outright from the existing person, or I'm going to wholesale the deal with the existing person. And even when I do a purchase agreement, I typically will go ahead and do the warranty deed as well, unless I'm counting on this as a wholesale deal and a wholesale transaction. Okay, good. We're going to keep on going. I don't see any questions. Let's go on to the next piece of paperwork here. Let me go ahead and pull this over for you guys. This is our hard money loan agreement. So this loan agreement is dated on the 30th of November. Has your address on it. This is a property we did on. This was the Easter Street property. So you'll see this on Easter Street because initially our negotiation was for a hard money loan on the property, but we ended up purchasing the property instead of doing a hard money loan. So loan and interest amount to the borrow, 20% is pretty common. You're able to get 20%, pretty factual. The individual borrowers are jointly and severable liable. The payment will be repaid in full February 29th, 2016. So on this one, we had a 1-year bullet on it, but you can also do 3 months, 6 months on a document like this to get a hard money loan done on the property. And these are contracts that are drawn up by attorneys. I do say that these are sample agreements that you want to use your own attorneys. Definitely with a hard money loan, definitely want to get a notary as a part of this loan as well. Notaries aren't that expensive. There's also a company called lawdepot.com that you can pull contracts and things off of as well, which is a really good resource for you to be able to write down too. Let me see what else I have here for you guys. I got all kinds of good stuff for you guys. Okay, here's another one, statutory of durable power of attorney. So when we use this power of attorney, it's very important that you know that this is not a general power of attorney. So it's not a power of attorney over a person's entire life. And lots of times you're going to have to explain this to the owners of the property, to the people that you're taking rights over from the property. So this is a specific power of attorney with a specific purpose. So it's a power of attorney towards the property. It's typically if there are loans or there are liens on the property, it'll give me a power of attorney to discuss any matters in regards specifically to those liens and those properties. And so sometimes there's even a list of different things. You can see here, here's some different things that it lists. But lots of times you'll just type this list of things that you're going to have power of attorney with the person over. You'll just type those in. If you have all these in there, what'll happen is that'll freak out the owners a lot of times. And so, if you are going to, you want to have a big black marker and just make sure you completely black out the things that are there. Sometimes in these documents, when you're on the fly, you don't have the time and you could literally lose the deal or lose the transaction if you're not very specific, if you can't get the deal done right then and there. When you have these people in agreement and you have these people ready to do a deal and transaction with you, you need to act as quickly as possible right then and there. So the one thing is having the notary available is important. So typically when I do these trips, I either try to get a notary who's either a part of the trips with me, or what I will do is I will have a notary on call and ready to go. I think if you do this, you're going to find a lot better deal and a lot better transaction in these situations. Very good. The other thing with the power of attorney is it'll give you the rights, just like the letter of authorization will give you the rights to be able to talk to their mortgage companies. It'll give you the rights to be able to talk to lien holders. It's an even stronger letter than the authorization to release. But typically, if you're not buying the property, most of the time the owners won't want to sign a power of attorney in order to bring this together. So right now I'm just going to give everybody about 30 seconds and see if there's any questions about these contracts. And of course, Holly asked the age-old great question. She says, will you give these papers later? So I am going to give you guys a copy of these contracts, and I'll just caveat that one more time with saying that, look, these are sample contracts that were drawn up for deals and transactions we've done by our attorneys, and they may or may not work effectively for you on your deals and transactions, so you might want to have them checked by your own attorney. but it'll probably save you money if you have a document they can kind of go off of in the beginning. I always recommend to people Prepaid Legal Services. I think is a great company because you can usually get things done at a really good discount. And then let me see what Michael's question is. Would you recommend a local lawyer to view every deal? I would. I would. You know, I just think sometimes having an attorney do stuff is an extra cost, but I just feel like it can save you a headache and a hassle later. Now, if you're used to, working in a territory or working in an area on a regular basis, you're not as likely to have to do those kind of things every single deal, every single transaction, which could save you, some money on a per deal basis. And I really believe in trying to focus on a maximum of 2 different areas at a time, because if you do that, you'll get a little bit of an economy of scale, and it'll save you a good amount of effort later on when you're doing deals and you're doing transactions. So very, very good question, Michael. Let's go ahead and we're going to move on to what I believe is one of the secret weapons that nobody that I find really teaches in tax deeds and tax liens, and this is the waiver to the right of redemption. So what this is, and I will typically get this signed even if I'm going to foreclose on a property. So on a hard money loan, a lot of times I will get this signed as a part of a pre-action deal. But when I do go to auctions and I buy properties at tax sale or at HOA sales, if I can get this document signed, sometimes it'll cost me money. Like I'm dealing with a property in Houston right now where I just got the father and the daughter to go ahead and sign this waiver to the right of redemption. And what this does, it gets rid of my 6 months or my 2-year redemption process. And the cool part is these people lots of times know they're going to lose the property anyways. So why do I have to wait 2 years or 6 months or 1 year in order to do what I need to do to clear up the title on my property? And here's the thing, is when you're doing tax sale properties, we always recommend a company called Tax Title Services really to help you clean up title a lot of times. But the reality is why not save the money that you would typically give to Tax Title Services and get someone to do a waiver to the right of redemption, and then that's something you can use to get the title cleared up real specifically. And so I'm going to give you guys a copy of this. It is the magical document, I believe, when it comes to tax sales, and because it's just, how do you get control of a property? How do you own the property? How do you sell the property? How do you do whatever you want? And here's the thing is, if I go and rehab a property that has a redemption period and they want to redeem, and granted, I can charge them for the fix-up or the rehab I've done on the property, and at the same time, they could come back and it could bite me in the butt and it could be a battle and a fight. But if they've signed this document, there's no way for them to come back and redeem their property. So we'll go ahead and go back to the document. I think the last thing that I would share about this paperwork is it's just part of being prepared. If you can be prepared and ready to do stuff, and 5 other people have come up and talked to them, and go back, like literally, what's the best way to put this? Literally, I've gone to sales and I've gone to transactions where within minutes or within an hour of me being there, someone else has been there. And someone else may have talked to him and said, oh, maybe we can work out a deal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, no, not maybe we can work out a deal. We can work out a deal. We can work it out right now. And you can take this headache, you can take this hassle off your plate forever. And imagine how much more powerful that is than saying, maybe I can work out a deal. Or let me go talk to my people to try and work out a deal. If you can do this stuff on the fly, you can be flexible, you can be prepared, then you can get so much more accomplished than anybody else that is out there. So it's absolutely fantastic information. Negotiations. Well, as you guys can tell from today's training, the negotiations part is literally my favorite part of doing this business. I believe more money is made in the negotiations, made in the ability to be able to talk to people, figure things out in ways no one else can figure out. So the first thing is, when there's a person and you're talking to them, is this is my first step of my 5 steps, is you have to know what their why is. What is their reason to do business with me, right? The reason to do business with me might well be, you know what, the property is going to sale on Tuesday. The property is going to sale on Thursday, and they've got to do something now or they get nothing, right? That could be the loss why. But the reality is this is usually what I call an immediate gratification problem. Their why is they might not want to be homeless. Their why is they might want to get some money out of the situation. Their why can be any number of different things. And so you've got to figure out kind of, number one, what is their immediate gratification problem? So what caused this whole situation? Who do they blame? 90% of the time, they blame something or someone besides themselves for their current state of affairs. And so if you can let them share that with you, now that you can move past that. But if you don't let them share that with you, you'll never get any further in this process of talking to them. They'll shut you out. They won't listen to you, and you won't be able to negotiate the deal any further. And so this is the crazy, crazy, insane part of understanding negotiations. For me, like when I go back to my why, I start to understand other people's why. And so my why goes all the way back to when I used to coach college baseball at the University of San Francisco. And it's one of the reasons I love this business. It's one of the reasons why I believe that we do a great service and helping people. And it motivates me. It drives me. It's what gets me to do things out of my own free will. And so my eye is when I coached baseball at the University of San Francisco, I used to do private lessons in order to make money because when you first start coaching college baseball, it's like indentured servitude. I mean, you're literally working for nothing, and you find other ways to make money. And I think this is kind of the start of my entrepreneur journey. And so as I'm doing these things, one of the things I did was private lessons, and I would do baseball lessons with kids, and this is how I made money. And so one of the kids, his name was Grant. Just he was just like the greatest kid you could possibly imagine. He's one of those kids, like if a bully was picking on another kid, he might hit the bully in the nose. And like he was just a baseball nut. He was crazy about it. Loved baseball. I mean, he would beg for more lessons. He would come whenever he could. He's just a great kid, almost like the little brother I never had. I have three older brothers. I never had a little brother, and I was 22, 22 at the time, and and so Grant was this great kid. And I'm driving into the University of San Francisco, and I hear on the radio, 12-year-old boy Grant killed in the city of San Francisco. And literally, like, I used to commute 30 to 40 minutes, which I hated, into work. And sometimes it could be 2 hours depending on traffic. And as I'm driving in, I hear this, and like in a blink of an eye, I'm at the University of San Francisco because the next 40 minutes I couldn't, like, I just had an instinct it was him. And so I pick up the phone and called his mom, and she said, yeah, Grant was shot and killed, and his father's the one that did it. And then his father committed suicide. And that just blew me away. His father had given up kind of financial hope for himself. His father had given up life hope for himself. And the day that it happened, I had talked to his father for 30 minutes. I didn't want to listen to him. I wasn't a big fan of the guy, and maybe I should have. And so I missed an opportunity to make a difference in this world, and I won't let myself do that. And so when I'm doing these deals, when I'm doing these transactions, I know why I'm doing them, because not only can I build a financial future for my family and my children and my children's children and my relatives, and I can help great people like those of you on this training really make an impact on your family's lives, but we have the ability to help people who are stuck, help people that are going through their own grieving process, help people who've lost jobs, help people that have mental illness, help people who have strong addictions, maybe help give them a little bit of a catalyst, a little bit of hope in order to restart their dream, in order to restart their lives, in order to rebuild their lives. And so when you get down to the why with people, you really start to understand. And it's not like I got to say, oh, what is your why? No, it's listening to them and letting them get it out, letting them share it with you. Because if you listen to them, people will tell you everything. And typically this why has been caused or created by the second step of this whole process, which is some kind of pain. And if you understand people's pain, you can understand how to get people into action. And so there's a couple ways to enforce this pain or get this pain to be real relevant with people, because lots of times they're non-confronting it, or lots of times they're not really paying attention to it in a healthy way. And so, bringing them back to the root moment of the pain, like I did with Grant Shannon just a moment ago with all of you, and let's get caught back up to the now. But But with Grant's story, it was really so much pain. With every individual that's in one of these properties, there's pain associated with it in some way, shape, or form. And if you can get back to them the root cause of pain, they're much more likely to want to do something about it. They're not hiding it away. They're not escaping from it in some way. They're not running from it in some way. They're talking about it. Another thing you can do is do what we call future pace people. And what future pacing is you're taking them into the future and what their life could be different if they do something about it. But more important is if they don't do something, what's really going to happen to them. You see that in the letters that we sent. You've seen that in the conversations I've been having with people again and again and again. I mean, we've given you so many examples of it. It's crazy. And the time that people are most likely to take action in this world is when they're in pain. If you touch a hot stove, you move your hand immediately. If an addict hits bottom, it's because they're in massive pain. And that's the only time when they're actually going to do something about it. And so doing this is really how we move people back into what we call an action sequence, which is putting them in a situation where they can do something about it. Now, remember that very carefully. It's what can they do about it, not what can I do for them, not what can I do, but what can they do about it, and giving them options, to choose what are we going to do here? Not saying, well, can we do a deal? Can we? No, what are we going to do here? You're going to have to move. You're going to have to move into a new place. Do you want help with that? You're going to lose this and get nothing out of this. Do you want something about this? Which really leads into my fourth step, which is the yes ladder. What the yes ladder is getting commitments from them that they want to do something about this, that they want to accomplish something in a really strong way. But just back to that third point of negotiations, it's all about who they're going to do business with. You might want to write these down. Who they're going to do business with, what they're going to do about it, what they want from this situation. When do they need to do something about this? Because if they wait, the pain's only going to get worse. If they do something about it now, they're taking some control of their life. And so these actions are very important for us to be able to get them back into the now moment. Because people can only make decisions when they're in a now moment. If they're in the past, they're facing some kind of depression. If they're in the future, they're facing massive anxiety. Both can be paralytics. Both can paralyze them from taking any action at all. So what we've got to do is get them back into the now moment by helping them make decisions about what they want to do, about the actions they want to take to go and succeed. And if you do that, now you got somebody who's working with you versus you being two separate entities. This is important. It's not about what they're going to do or what you're going to do now. It's about what can you accomplish together. How can you get this done with them? How can you work on a team with them? This is critical. This is key to this whole process. Now, the fourth step in this process, the yes ladder, is very important. I could ask everybody on this phone, very easily a yes ladder series of questions. So, do you guys want to make money in real estate? Yes. Do you guys want to make money from deals before the auctions? Yes. Do you guys want to not have to compete against the big bidders and the people with lots of money at auctions? Yes. Do you want to be able to get better deals than you could do even if you maybe purchased at auction, or get better deals than if you're not doing anything with tax deeds and liens at all? The answer is yes, right? Do you guys want to have that redemption letter so you can clear title if you do if you do buy at auction? The answer is yes. Do you guys want me to send you all the paperwork and all of the marketing letters that I've shared with you today so that you have some real tools to move forward with? The answer is yes. And so these are yes letters. And so typically what I'll do with the homeowners is I'll talk them through the situation, and I'll get them to a point where they're really ready to move. They're ready to take action. Now, the fifth step, here's the part that I see taught the most wrong by either sales trainer or negotiations trainers, or even by even by communications people. This fifth step is you have to be willing to tell them what's going to happen. Tell them what to do. You do it politely, you do it respectfully, and if you've already done the first four steps, you already have permission to tell them what to do. Matter of fact, sometimes when I'm finishing my yes letter, I'll say this very specific line to them. You may want to write it down. Do I have your permission to go ahead and tell you what we're going to do in order to get you into a better situation? Do I have your permission to tell you what we're going to do to get you into a better situation? And if they say yes, you say, awesome. Well, let me tell you exactly how this is going to work. I'm going to give you X amount of money. I'm going to have you sign this type of paperwork. Here's what each piece of this paperwork means. And I'm going to give you this much time to move out of the property. And so that's exactly what you do. And then you immediately get the paperwork out and you say, now it's time for you to go ahead and fill the paperwork out. And so this is how we conduct these transactions. We tell them what to do. Where it's taught wrong a lot of times is people will ask them to do things. And in this fifth step, if you ask them to do things, they will do nothing. I've literally seen this, and I've tested this, and I've sat across a kitchen table. I've sat in a Starbucks. I've met with people, and I've asked them to do things, and I've sat there, and they just sit there. They don't take any action. They don't do anything. And then when I politely, respectfully tell them exactly what needs to happen, exactly what they're going to do, they fill out the paperwork and they do exactly what they're supposed to do to go ahead and succeed in the transaction. Good. Any questions about negotiations, go ahead and jump in. I'm going to keep on going, okay? Here's a couple of my rules. Those first 5 things are steps. These are rules. So number 1 rule over anything else is always listen. And truly listen. Don't wait for what you want to say. Don't wait for what you got to get done here. Don't have an agenda per se in the sense of rushing. It's listen. Listen to them. Read between the lines. People have a reason why they're in the situation they're in. People have a reason why, in their minds, they have a reason. It might not make any sense to you and I, but they have a reason why they do things. They have a reason why they're in the situation they're in. And so listen, hear them. That's when you hear what the why is. That's when you hear what the pain is. Okay? So that's in those first 2 steps. This is so, so critical. The next thing is always agree with them. I know this sounds crazy, but you're not going to go into the situation and try and be their counselor in the beginning. Later on, you can give them advice. Later on, you can help move them into a more positive direction. But in the beginning, you always are going to agree with them. It's a part of getting over that immediate gratification. Why? You're going to agree with them. If they say the county's screwing you over, you say, yep, I totally understand. I see this happen again and again to people. It sucks that you're in the situation. If they say that Barack Obama is the devil, if they say that Donald Trump is evil, if they if they say any of these things, you just agree. If they say God is punishing them, you say I understand. Okay, and these are things that you're going to do, because if you disagree with them, now you're in a disagreement with them. Now you're in a conflict with them. Now you're not doing what we call non-resistive communication, and now you're in a place where you're not going to get them to do what you want them to do. Okay. The next thing is you always be the one asking the questions, and you always stick to your guns. So what I mean by sticking to your guns is they will, many of these people have addictions. Many of these people will try and manipulate the situation. Some of these people are slimy, and some of these people are just great human beings. But you have to stick to your guns. So whatever you went in as your max amount for this property, whatever you went in to negotiate the deal with, that's what you stick to. Don't come out of that boundary. It's kind of like they want you to give them a little bit of cash right now. No, I'm going to give you cash. I'm going to give you money when we close this transaction. Nothing happens unless we close. Because if you don't stick to your guns, they can push you off tilt, push you off center line, and when they push you off center line, you may end up doing something in the transaction that you really don't want to do. The next thing is always do what it takes to get the meeting. If they say I want this much for the property, say I'm open to that. I don't know enough about the property yet to make that decision. Let's go ahead and meet so I can get a firmer understanding of what's going on. If it's a renter in the property, work on getting a meeting with the owner. If it's a relative, get a meeting with the owner. You have to push to get the meeting. If you don't push to get the meeting, then you're just wasting your time. The last thing is use the word cash. For some reason, the word cash just rings bells in people's ears. You could hear it in the letters that I wrote. You could hear it in the different conversations that I shared with you guys today over and over and over. If you're able to walk away with cash in your pocket right now, what's the minimum, what's the least amount you would do? for this deal, for this property. And whatever the number they give you, you know that they'll accept even less than that. But the bottom line is that where cash gets people to move, it gets people to act. If somebody says, will you come over and help me move today? Most people are going to say they don't really want to. Maybe if they're a great person or a close friend, they'll do it. They'll say, you know what, I'm going to give you some cash for coming over and helping me move. More people will help you move. And so cash is king, and it speaks volumes to people. And later I'll talk more about cash, but you have to realize that you are in control, that you need to stick to your guns. You got to get the meeting. You're always going to listen, and you're always going to agree with them when it comes down to it. So these are very, very important negotiation tips or rules and steps that are there for you. The next thing with the negotiations is you have to know your numbers, right? You just have to. If you don't know your numbers going into a deal, then you can get yourself into a non-positive situation with the transaction, and none of us want that for you with your success. And so what I want each of you to realize is that your numbers are everything when it comes to deal making. And if you don't know your numbers, you can end up in a bad deal or a bad situation. When you buy right, no matter what your exit strategy is you'll figure it out. It's important to have an exit strategy, but if you get in right, you're going to be okay. And so knowing your numbers, know what properties are selling for in the area, know how often properties are selling for, know how much money you have available to you. Always, always, overestimate, always overestimate your repairs and your fix of the property. For me, when I'm doing my deals, if I'm gonna buy and hold a property, I'll probably go up to 60%, maybe even depending on the neighborhood in the area. If it's a nicer neighborhood, if it's an A class, B class neighborhood, I might go up to 70% of market value. But what I was saying that is that 70% of market value before repairs. So if I have a property that's worth 200,000 and I think there's going to be 30,000 in repairs, then I'm always going to add 25% to that. So I'm going to say there's going to be 40,000 in repairs. And so now I'm down to 160. Then I'm going to max I would do in that situation in a decent neighborhood is 70% of that 160. And so now I kind of have my bottom line number when it comes to a deal and a transaction. These are things that you have to know before you go into the negotiations of the deal and of the transaction. And even if they're loose numbers, at least you have to know them. Zillow, Trulia, those things aren't enough, but at least they're a good starting point for you in numbers. This next tip is gold. It's completely gold. So make sure you write it down and pay attention. So if you inspect the property, if you know everything about a property with the homeowner before the first negotiation, if you know everything about it, then you have no room to negotiate a second time when you give things up when you find out things about the property. So what I like to do is have my first negotiations with them and get to some numbers. And then I like to go in and negotiate and inspect the property, find out everything that is wrong with the property, the neighborhood, I mean everything. And then I use that as my inventory, or I use that as my backbone when I go in to negotiate the numbers a second time and drive my price down, because this gives me a much better idea of doing the transaction. Look, something that I commonly say that I know it works to these owners of these properties is I will commonly say to them, look, I'm an investor. I'm here to make money. Now I want to create a situation where you win and I win, and we can both walk away from this as friends. We can both walk away with this with some cash in our pocket, and it'd be a positive experience for both of us. And so for me, I've got to do deals that are profitable. And so when I find out these things about a property, the original numbers we negotiate won't make this profitable for me. And so we've got to come down on these numbers or it's not going to be a deal. Don't be afraid to walk away from a deal. I think lots of times when people are working on the deal or the deal, it's hard for them to walk away in a negotiation. If you walk away, it's amazing. Before you even walk out the door, lots of time they'll come down on their price. Lots of times they'll renegotiate. They might call you later that day, the next day. It's really there. Doesn't mean you don't pick up the phone and call them as well, because you do. Because remember, it's like a ticking time bomb. The auction is coming. The auction is coming. The auction is coming. And the closer you are to the auction, and they have you as an option versus just losing everything, then they're going to want to do business with you. It's very, very important for you to know this. The next thing is find out what they need now. What do they need right now to get moving forward in their life? Usually it's not that much money. It's not that much money for them to be able to have a down payment for another home. It's not that much money for them to have moving money. It's not that much money for them to have a deposit on an apartment. Um, all of these things is what they need right now. And for most situations, this is the most important money to these people. It's not the actual sale price of the property. It's what they need right now. And what I find when I negotiate on what they need right now versus the property, and I take the kind of get the property out of the negotiation, I really focus on them and what they need, I find I get much better deals, much better transactions. And like I said before, know your comps, know your max amount before you go into the negotiation, because then you can stick to your guns and you can set real clear boundaries for yourself on what you're thinking. This all creates, like Michael said here, one of our students, great leverage. And so this is how we do transactions. And back to this thing of walking away, I'll tell you that doesn't matter what I'm buying, I walk away. I literally was in Los Angeles and I went down to buy some suits, and I needed to buy a few new suits. And I'm not a big spender. I'm lucky that I have a wife who is very good with keeping money and very good with negotiating. And she's even better at keeping me from spending a lot of money than I am. And I always believe that the less I spend, the more money I have to invest, which helps build my family's future for the future. And so what I've come to find is that walking away in every situation is incredibly important. So literally, I went and bought 3 suits on Thursday of this week, and every single store we walked into, I walked away. And before I walked away, every single one of the stores but one came down on their price for the suits in order to negotiate a better deal. And I bought suits at 3 different stores that came down on their price, and the fourth one that didn't come down on their price, I did not buy a suit from that store. And so that goes to tell you how important these negotiations are when it comes to doing transactions. So when we come back from break, which we're going to take right now, I'm going to get more into these conversations of how to watch your back, how to make sure you're always doing things the right way, how you're always doing transactions, keeping yourself safe, what not to do when you're doing these deals and transactions. And that'll be our last segment of the day. So we're going to take a 10-minute break right now. So we'll start back at 2:05 Pacific Standard Time. Feel free to ask questions in the question box during the break. Write down some more questions. Give me some feedback on how you enjoyed the training today, and then we will take her home for the day. Thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Today has been a really awesome day. I think we've covered a ton of information in a very short period of time. And I wanted to ask those of you that are on the webinar, I want to ask you guys a favor and get your guys' permission to ask you a favor. So if you could give me a yes in the question box, I'd like to go ahead and maybe ask all of you to do a favor for us. I think relationships are give and take, and I'm asking to receive and for you to give a little bit. So if I can get your permission, just give me a yes in the question box. James, say yes. I'm glad you're still with us, James. Hadn't heard from you for a while. Oh, yeah, I did. Not that long ago. And anybody else besides James giving me a big loud yes? Janice says yes. Terry says yes. Harvey says yes. Another Michael says yes. Very good. So Tony says yes. Good, good. Trevor says yes. Good. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to ask your guys' permission. If you guys could go on Yelp, YELP, and look up Dustin Hahn and give us a review and a feedback, not just for this pre-auction profits, but your overall relationship with the company and the organization. We would tremendously appreciate that greatly. You could even put my name in and give me a review too. But more importantly for the company and Dustin Hahn International Tax Lien Certificate School, I would really appreciate that. And if you do, and you let me know that you did, either through customer service or any one of many ways you guys can contact us, then I have an extra bonus I will send out to you, and I'm not even going to tell you what that is. Yes, it's a little bit of a what you call a ethical positive bribe. So let's go ahead and move on to watching your back. I think it's very important when we're doing transactions and things that you guys watch your back, that you're very careful about how you do things. Because I think you have to, when you're doing pre-auction profits, when you're out there door knocking, you're out there doing deals, I think there's certain mistakes you could make that could cost you a lot of money or even put you in an unhealthy situation. So I want to keep it real positive and make sure that you're safe. So the next thing is when you're doing these pre-auction deals, no matter what kind of agreement you have with the homeowner, you must go down and pay the taxes, the property taxes yourself. And granted, they can go with you a lot of times, but the bottom line is, it's the county wants their money, and they don't particularly care who pays it. And so you have to go down and pay the taxes. Never let them say they're going to pay the taxes themselves, because if they don't, and you have a property, whether you have a lien on it or a purchase agreement, none of that really matters if it gets foreclosed on. The amount of headache that it is to be able to get that property back at that point is just way too much. Never give them any money without already getting what you want. And what I mean is lots and lots of times these are people that have exhausted their ability to get money from other people. You know, they've borrowed money, they owe people money. There's all kinds of situations, and so they lots of times won't have a problem asking you for money, and don't even you're not even going to give $100, because what happens is then you start a trend, or then you create an imbalance in the relationship for what we're trying to accomplish. So you're never going to give them any money without your contracts getting signed. You're just never going to do it, and it's always going to be healthier. Another thing is when you're exchanging money, whether it's check, cashier's check. If you're actually giving someone cash, which I don't recommend, I would always at least do a cashier's check, because then you have a more of an official record of it. Always meet in a neutral public place when exchanging money. Don't exchange money in their homes. Have I done this before? Sure, but I don't recommend it. And the reason I don't recommend it is because it can put you into an unhealthy situation. And if someone was ever going to pull something criminal or something along those lines, they're likely to do it where they feel most comfortable. So if you do it in a public place, you're just keeping yourself safe. And 99% of the times, none of these things are ever a worry. But I think you create certain rules of safety and you abide by them at all times. It's just so important. And this next one is a little bit different. And over the years, um, I've learned to trust this instinct. And when I don't trust it, it bites me in the butt. And I even trust my team's instinct, and I especially trust my wife's instinct when it comes to these things. If the deal doesn't feel right, if the situation doesn't feel right, if something in your gut, if something's telling you it's wrong, then get out. Even if you got to bring somebody else in to help you view it in a different way and take time, don't ever feel that you can't take time. Now, I said be prepared, be flexible, be ready to act, be ready to move. Yes, be ready doesn't mean you have to. And so I think it's very, very important that in a deal or in a transaction or in a situation, if it feels wrong, if it feels unhealthy, if it feels like something's off, you know what? You're better off on passing on a deal than doing a bad deal. You're better off passing on a deal than doing a deal you just don't feel right about. Now, for some of you, this is a little bit different because you've never done deals, you've never done transactions. And for some of you, there's this feeling, there's this gut instinct, there's this thing that's been built into you from years of either inaction or from years of not doing deals and transactions. There's this fear of the unknown that causes you to always have that gut that you don't want to do the deal. So what you have to do is you have to learn the difference between that fear and the fear that there's something actually wrong with the deal. Over the years, one of the things that I find, one character trait that I know separates the successful from the unsuccessful, and there's many character traits that separates the two from each other, but one of the traits that I find is the fear of the unknown. when people have to move into the unknown result, the unknown of how you're going to do the next part of the transaction, the unknown of who's going to purchase the property. And granted, we want to dot our I's and cross our T's and take care of many of those unknowns. But in every deal I think I've ever done in my whole life, there's always been some kind of unknown. And so you have to separate the fear of the unknown and the fear and the gut instinct that something's wrong, because those are two different feelings, and you have to learn the difference between those two. And so as you're doing transactions, in order to be successful, you're going to have to move into the unknown. You're going to have to push into an uncomfortable place. And so learning the difference between uncomfortability and learning the difference of the fear of unknown and a gut instinct that something's wrong here are two very different things. And lots of times in these deals, there is going to be stuff that is off, but that's a different feeling too than that there's something wrong with this particular deal or transaction and you need to walk away. The bottom line is, and this is something you have to put into your very DNA as an investor, there's always another deal. This is never the only deal. This is never the wrong deal. Myself, I'll even pray about each deal and before I move forward. And granted, I still move quickly, but I'm willing to move into the unknown. I'm willing to make sure I feel good about it before I do it. Because if you don't, you make mistakes. And it's not that 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 mistakes aren't going to happen, because that's just a part of real estate. But at the same time, if you can limit as many of those as possible, obviously the more money you're going to make in the long run. And so I think this is very, very important. But at the same time, another character trait of very successful people is they are really willing to take action. They're really willing to move forward. They're willing to make mistakes. They're willing to stumble before they walk, crawl before they walk before they run before they sprint. And so this is very, very important for you to know. The next thing is always pull title. Never assume. Never trust that what somebody who's staying in a house tells you to be true. As far as you know, the person that is in the house could be a oh, what do you call that when a settler? It could be somebody who's just moved into the property, never even rented it, never even owned it. They may have no relationship to the property whatsoever. An interesting story. We were on one of our auction trips, and I got this gut instinct that there were some good deals that we hadn't looked at yet. And I believe this was on a Saturday night, and it was like 10, 11 o'clock, and we had maybe 15 students on this trip. And I texted all the students. I said, I'm going out to look at two properties. Anybody who wants to come with me, because we go look at properties during the day. It's not usually the habit to go look at night. And so that night we went and looked at two properties, and we actually ended up purchasing one of those two properties. And the second property, the one we didn't purchase, we go to it, and it looks completely vacant. It had started a good rehab. It had been stripped down to the studs. And me and I think it was like six students were walking through this house with flashlights at night. Probably not the safest thing. I don't ever recommend that you guys walk through these houses, even if they're vacant. But you're adults and you can make your own decisions. And but I don't recommend it. But so somebody says, well, why don't you go upstairs, Dutch? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what's upstairs. And I said, well, why don't I get one of the McNeil boys to go up there with me, because they were both Air Force guys, and they were students that were on the trip with me. And so they came walking over, and they were going to walk up the stairs with me. And literally, as we went to walk up the stairs, this head pops out at the top of the staircase, but at the floor level. It says, hey, what the hell are you guys doing in this house? And kind of scared us all a little bit. And maybe we had overstepped our boundary a little bit. And it's just kind of one of those crazy things where I had that kind of instinct that something was wrong, that we shouldn't go upstairs, and it ended up being true. Now, we ended up talking with the gentleman. He said he was the caretaker of the property. I think he was just a squatter, and he ended up being a pretty nice guy. And at the same time, it's one of those things, if it feels wrong, get out. The last thing is always pull your title no matter what. Know what's going on with the title. Know that, know your order of liens: first lien, second lien, third lien position. Know that your tax lien will supersede any of those liens. But if you're negotiating a pre-auction deal, then it doesn't matter. Those liens stay in place, and you're going to have to deal with them, which is very, very important for you to know. The next thing is always travel in pairs. I think it's important to know that when you're out doing deals and you're door knocking, I know this is hard for some people because you're solo artists, but at the same time, if you don't know somebody who's interested in real estate, if you don't have a local club, or you don't have a local real estate club, or you don't have a meetup group, there are always people who want to go look at properties. And in the bigger picture, I believe that one of the greatest strategies that any investor can do to get private money, that any investor can do if they want to start their own fund, any investor can ever do if they want to get buyers, is get their buyers, get their investors, get their colleagues to go and look at properties with them. And it's where great partnerships are built. It's where great transactions are built. And it's so easy. It's such an easy conversation. Hey, I'm going to look at a bunch of properties. I'm going to talk to some owners and things. Would you like to go and look at some properties and deals with me? And I've never in my lifetime ever saw someone who asked those questions ever had a challenge with doing that. And I think it's just safer. And I think it's always good to have a second set of eyes. It doesn't matter how good you are. I've had investors who used to be home inspectors who still made mistakes. So it's always great to still have a second set of eyes when you're out there looking at deals and you're out there looking at transactions. Never carry cash. It's just one of those situations where there's no reason to do it. Even if you have cash or you have money to take to an auction, it can be put into a safety deposit box. Now you can have cash in a hotel room or you can have cash in a safe, but just don't carry cash on you while you're out looking at properties. There's just too many variables, too many different things going on. If you were ever in a situation where somebody, usually when we're in Texas, we actually have security with us on the trips. A lot of people are, carry, a firearm when we go on those trips. At least one or two people do, but it's just safety. And if somebody actually came and tried to rob your money, just give them the money. Nothing is worth that. So I always just recommend, not to carry your cash. Just have it with you when you go down to the auctions, but don't carry it while you're out there doing these deals. You can always go get the money. A deal can always wait long enough for you to go get the money and meet the person in a public place to exchange. And I sometimes count cashier's checks as the closest thing to cash that exists. If purchasing a property and the owner lives in the property, then as a part of the negotiation, a part of the deal is the owners need to move out. And here's the reason why. I just found too many situations with investors where they got hurt, where they left owners in properties. And so what I tend to find is owners have an emotional attachment to a property. And so if you evict them, if you force them out, if you push them out later on, what's going to happen is there's a good chance that they'll do some damage to the property. And we don't want to do damage to the property because that affects our capital, that affects our return on our investment and things. And so it's just very, very important for you to know that the owners must move out. There's just too many situations where owners aren't going to be positive for you to win with. Now, I have done this before with tax sale properties. I have allowed owners to begin renting from me, but I've never found it to be the best of situations. It always seems to be challenging. It always seems to be difficult. And so for me, when I purchase, owners move out, and it's just a better situation for everyone involved. The fourth thing is everyone on the title must sign. And I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes, but everyone must sign. If there's somebody who's died, there's an heirs agreement that people will sign off saying they're the only heirs to a property. In order for people to be able to do that, you can get that from a local attorney. I'll see if I can get that document drawn up for you guys too, to be able to send that out to you. But everyone on title must sign. It doesn't matter how many people there are. If you don't have everyone sign on title, then it's not a valid transaction when it comes to purchasing a property. Always have a notary present to be able to notarize. I recommend if you're doing real estate for a long time and you don't have a notary on your team or notary that can be there when you're doing transactions, either order a mobile notary to come out and meet you, or get your notary license so that you can notarize stuff and make sure that it is done the right way. My last step is I recommend for any of you that you get out to one of our auctions. You could go to dustinhollandinternational.com/auction to get on our waiting list. Right now, we're already fully booked for February, March, and April, and we have people who are coming to auctions throughout the year this year. I recommend getting out to one of them. It's something good you can do. I felt very blessed to be able to share with you guys today. I felt very blessed to be a part of this experience with you, to be able to really give you some insight into doing deals in a way that you've never seen them done before, a different way of conducting transactions and making money, which is really cool. Let me see here. Yes, pull your title means doing title research. Yes, Holly. Would you normally have the second person with you when you go to the door slash negotiate with the owner? I would. I would. I don't go into people's houses typically unless I have somebody with me. I can't say I've never done it, but I have way more experience than almost anybody when it comes to doing these kind of deals. I just would always recommend having that second person with you. And it just kind of sets the tone of the negotiation. Everything just is a little more official. You have a witness. It's just really good to have them with you at all times. So what I'm going to do is I'm done with the education and the content for today with everybody that's on the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait around here a couple of minutes, and I'm going to give you guys a chance to ask questions. Remember, please go to Yelp and give us a review. Give us some positive information. Yelp is something that you're doing as a kind favor, as a gift to Dustin and I as a Yelp review. We'll see it on there. I'm going to send you guys a great gift if you do that. If you have any other kind of constructive feedback, we're always open to that too. Send that into customer service, and that will get to me directly. But I feel like probably everybody had a phenomenal positive experience. I feel like in what I could do with you guys in 4 hours today, that it would take most people days, weeks, years to learn this information. And I also feel like I don't like to fluff things, and so I try to be very direct and to the point on what I think is going to make you money, what's going to make you successful. So um, let me go ahead and see what other questions. Any homework till the next session, says Michael. Well, the homework would go back to the slides where the first thing you do, Michael, is you need to go decide what county you're gonna go do this in. You need to go pull the list for that county and decide which properties you're going to go and visit. That would be your first homework for a project like this, because the next session we do is going to be awesome. You guys will probably have a lot more questions because you're going to be active, working in the business, doing the business and things. And so I think that's really really incredible for each and every one of you. Any other questions? If you're typing, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up today's training. I felt great about what I gave. I felt like you guys were drinking from a fire hose. I felt like we covered a lot of information fairly quickly. Lots of times students tell me I might go a little too fast. I apologize if I went too fast for you. I know during the initial training for this, I went really quickly. But I just want to cover so much, and I believe everyone's time is so valuable, and I know you guys made a good investment and a good investment of your time today to get this fantastic information. So good. Any other questions? Anything popping up for anybody? Good. You guys do have a month's worth of access for email questions, so feel free to send those in and let us know. If you're having challenges, if you're working on the middle of a deal and you want to ask questions, let us know. If you need help with comping a property or whatever it is, our team can give you some assistance with that. So feel free to reach out. Let us know what you need help with. If nothing else, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my weekend with my wife and my dog and my family. And God bless to everybody. Trevor, I don't give out my personal email to everyone. So what I would do is you can either email Joshua Blanchard, which is our customer service liaison, or you guys can email Gretchen, I believe, who's in touch with all of you, or even Dalen, who's in touch with all of you. Great training. Thank you. When will we get a pop? You'll get a copy of the paperwork this week, Holly. I'll send it out in an email to all of you so that you have copy of all the paperwork. Really good question, Holly. Holly, I know you get what you want in business because you ask the right questions. So I think you could be really successful, Holly. Um, very cool. Anybody else? Any other questions? You're very welcome, Holly. All right, everybody. God bless and have a great weekend and enjoy yourself and go look at some properties.